this weekend. We're going to get the weather here to you in just a second. I tell you, I normally start these shows with a discussion of some kind of history here, short of us having the Thorpe Report, and you choose the news. That'll be back next week along with Billy. We've got James behind the glass right now. I'm telling you, there's nothing from my standpoint that is exciting about this day in history. I mean, when the top thing on this day in history websites is the 1477 Battle of Nancy. And that's not like a schoolyard dating girl thing. That's not it at all. It's something that happened in Switzerland. And I'm sure it has huge historical significance. Don't care. But there are a couple birthdays on here that matter. One is Superman was born on this day. The original, the OG George, strong name, George Reeves, in 1914. That's his birthday. There was also birthdays of some famous people, including Bradley Cooper. That guy who, I don't know, man, everything that guy touches turns to gold. 49 years old. Robert Duvall. I'm a big fan of Bob Duvall, the movies that he has been in from, going way back, obviously, as Tom Hayden in The Godfather, all the other movies he'd done, even his bad boy role in Killer Elite with Jimmy Caan back around that same time. And then all the other movies that he's done since. Tender Mercies was his big one, I guess, for Oscar recognition, but he's always been such a great actor. He's 93, if you can imagine that. I can only hope to get close to that. January Jones, she's big from Mad Men. She's 46, but none of these people look their age, which really pisses me off. It just tells me you have to be super rich and in Hollywood to take care of your skin and your health to do that. Jane Wyman, I believe, first wife to Ronald Reagan, also born. And then the one that, I don't know, for me was kind of the bigger one, the eye-catching one, was Walter Mondale. And maybe that's just because it was in my formative years when I first became aware of politics. And not that I was politically interested, okay? I'm not telling you this because I was still in single digits at the end of the 70s, but I became aware. You know what I mean? Like, you become aware of what your parents are talking about and the things that were on the nightly news and all that stuff. And that 1980 and then 84 election were huge. By the time we get to term two for Ronald Reagan, 1984, and Walter Mondale is the nominee, I'm 13, 14 years old. I know what's going on. I have a real sense of it. I'm still not politically active in that way, but I'm paying close attention to this, right? And Walter Mondale was the vice president under Ford, and that administration just went off the rails here at the end. And just, the malaise and all that stuff. Guy resurfaces, becomes the party for Democrats, the party nominee in 1984, and gets shellacked by historic numbers. And when I say historic numbers, you'll recall that Reagan won 49 states. The only state he didn't win in 1984 was Mondale's home state of Minnesota. Ouch. You just don't see that kind of dominance anymore. Whatever happens in 2024, it's not going to even be close to that. Now, I know there are some Trump crazies out there who think he won every state. He won every state last time, but the stolen election kept it. Come on, folks. That's just never, ever going to happen again. But back then in 84, dang. And that was Walter Mondale. And he passed away in April of 2021, again, at the age of 93. But if you look at some of these numbers, too, he became a senator in 1964. Guy was born in 1928. Now, you can do the easy math on that. Dude was 36 years old, and he's one of two U.S. senators from Minnesota. And he served 2 terms before being tapped for vice president. What? By the time I was 36, I'd done next to nothing. I'm still right there. I'm next to nothing at this point. I don't know how some of these people find their way into the positions that they are. And you look at them, and I'm sure they're very impressive in a way that we can't tell from just what the media covers. But dang, I'm not writing symphonies. I'm not inventing anything. I haven't started a movement. I don't have 1 billion followers on Twitter, TikTok or anything. You look at some of these folks and you think, I feel like I'm killing myself working hard every day. How do these people find themselves in these positions? And then if you were like me too, in the early years of C-SPAN, and you would sometimes turn on to watch and see, you're listening to these gong shows that have been elected to the Senate and the House, and you think, I could do that. Are you kidding? I can do that kind of stuff. Having said that, that's a good segue into the Congress that we have right now. As you know, Lauren Boebert, who was on the show, and I really appreciate her coming on, and I hope she'll come on again to talk as the campaign continues, made this kind of ground shaking, at least for Colorado, but it was national news announcement that she is going to stay in the third for the rest of her term, but run in the fourth for the rest of her life. And that's created a bit of a stir. I mean, there are some people that are thrilled to have Lauren in the race. There are others who are like, wait a minute, you're not from here. You don't live here. I don't believe you can just make that easy transition. I've told you, I think she's going to win. Just like I've told you, I think Trump's going to win. Trump's going to win the nomination. And if we had the election today, he's going to be president of the United States. That's just going to happen. Well, I think Lauren's going to win the fourth. But I was on Colorado Inside Out yesterday after the radio. Colorado Inside Out is on PBS 12. The show gets put out there today, this afternoon, this evening, but you can find it online after that. And that, of course, became one of the topics. And I don't know if the camera caught all these people, but I was the token conservative on this panel. They had a great panel on there, including, as always, Patty Calhoun. She is a regular there. And Patty, listen, I'm just a big Patty Calhoun fan. She just knows stuff that other people don't know about Denver, but better than that, and we should get her back on the show here pretty quickly, but she's able to put it in a perspective that's not just conversational, but it relates to all the other events going on. She just knows things. Next to her was Elena Alvarez, a nice reporter from Axios, does a great job, seems pretty balanced in my mind, and she was good to work with. And then next to her was Amber McReynolds, who's a super election genius, and I think she's on the Postal Service board, which is a presidential appointment thing, which is kind of a big deal, but she's like an election guru, big ranked choice voting advocate. Now that I think about it, and then there always, it was hosted by superstar Kyle Dyer, formerly of Channel 9, but it's just, she's one of the nicest people you could ever meet and work with. In fact, they're all nice, but I mean, Kyle is just genuinely nice. A lot of people, I think, wonder, what's somebody like off camera? Kyle is off camera exactly who you see on camera. She's just a super nice person. She makes everybody feel great. So now that I think about it, not only was I the token conservative, I think I was the dude. I was the token dude. I was the affirmative action person on the panel yesterday. And anyway, we get to the topic of Lauren Boebert because it happened after they're filming for the end of the year show. And we talk about it. And I got to tell you, man, everybody on that panel was, it seemed to me, visibly incredulous at the idea that Lauren was going to win this seat. In no way should you interpret that as me saying, I think she's better than all the other candidates, or I think the other candidates don't deserve it. I'm not saying any of that stuff. I mean, of the candidates that I know, I like all these people, right? Like, you've got people that used to be on the station. You've got friends like Jerry Sonnenberg and Mike Lynch, and people that I want to get on the show and talk with, like the Richard Holtorfs and all. I mean, there are a lot of good people in this race who could do a good job. So don't hear me saying anything other than, as the dude who's sitting back, not in the race, thank God. You know, Lauren Boebert is Lauren Boebert, man. She's going to bring $1.5 million from her coffers in the third over to her coffers in the fourth. Who's going to get more than that over the course of the entire election that's going to run against her? Who's going to do that? She starts off with undeniable name ID. Undeniable name ID. Who doesn't know who she is? I presume, like I said, she pulled the fourth and saw that she's crushing everybody else. If I had to guess too, I'd say the person with the number 2 highest name ID in that district would be Jerry Sonnenberg. Jerry has been out of office for a couple minutes, but Jerry in the northeast part of the state, everybody knows Jerry. I mean, dude's an active rancher, but he was also in the legislature for a billion years. I would say he'd probably be number 2 in that. Mike Lynch, of course, incredibly active in the North. He would be right up there. Deb was on the ballot for Senate, but that's not enough. That helped. That's very helpful, and it's recent, but not enough. Anyway, I guess my point is they were all incredulous. As I was saying, I think Lauren Boebert's going to win. And they were looking at me, but what about the fact that, carpetbagger? And what about the fact? I said, hey, all legitimate issues to talk about. Not going to matter. Here's the other potential wild cards out there. Who is going to come out to endorse her? Will President Trump weigh in on this seat? Doesn't have to. I mean, he's not going to win Colorado no matter what, but he's a name on the tip of every Republican's tongue that's out here. What's he going to do? Now, he may set this one out, but if he doesn't, let's just say for a moment, he comes out and he endorses Lauren Boebert. Is that game, set, and match? How does anybody overcome that? I don't know. I mean, but like I said, whatever you think the issues are, and they're legitimate issues to talk about, and we ask those questions, you should go back and listen to that podcast. I think she's going to win. I think she's going to be the next congresswoman from the 4th. And my hope is she moves to Douglas County. No offense to Weld. I love Weld. But I hope she comes to Douglas County. That's like 47% of the population of the 4th anyway. But I live down there. Who doesn't want their congressperson to come from their county? If you're looking for someone to have special interest in making sure that things are good for where they live, you want them to live near you, right? So I hope she moves to Douglas County. That's all I could say. But that's going on tonight. So if you get a chance, set your little recorder, set your VCR, if you still own one, after you drive home in your car with your 8-track. Set your VCR for PBS 12 tonight, Colorado Inside Out. It's always fun. They do a good job of editing it too, so all my curse words are out. There was a little funny back and forth on ranked choice voting. My understanding now is, from listening to Mick Reynolds, is that there are 3 ballot measures that are going to hit the ballot in November 2024 that are before the title board right now. And they're going to take different little bites out of the process for elections. One of them is this ranked choice voting. I am at the moment opposed to ranked choice voting. I'm open to a conversation about it, but I don't like it. I was told that, hey, all the places that have ever tried it, nobody has ever quit it and they all love it. That's not what I've heard. I haven't done my deep dive research on it. If you guys know something, let me know. But ranked choice voting, I think there may be an open primary out there. And by open primary, I mean there's not going to be any more Democrat primary, Republican primary, and they'll both show up on the ballot. No, there's going to be an open primary where the top 2, I hope it's top 2. I hope it's not top 4 with ranked choice voting. And maybe that's the direction they're going. I think we should just do top 2. And they could both be Republicans. They could both be Democrats. Hell, they could both be unaffiliated. It doesn't matter. I think that would be an efficient way to get to a real quick primary where at least one person is going to end up with more than 50% of the vote. And I think that's what we want to see. We don't want to see any more winners take office who have less than 50% of the vote. You want to have at least that statistical mandate. So that's out there, that conversation we just scratched the surface of yesterday. But I love the talk that we had. Now, other things in the news, I did not get a chance to watch this game, but the aftermath of it is OMG stuff. Now, folks, if you haven't yet been to a Nuggets game to watch Nikola Jokic play, 2-time MVP, and I think everybody agrees last year should have been a 3-time MVP. I just think they got tired of giving it to him. I think they were like, this is ridiculous. This guy, we are witnessing one of the greatest basketball players. This isn't hyperbole, okay? We are witnessing one of the greatest basketball players of the sport's history right here in Denver, Colorado. Want proof of it? These guys come back playing against GSW, the Golden State Warriors. That's Steph Curry's team, right? They are like, it seems like every other year they're in the finals. Stacked team, not the same team they were when they won recently, but a great team. It's 127 to 127. They're going into overtime. There's like, I can't even remember, 2 seconds left. 2 seconds left. James, does this have the play-by-play stuff leading up to it? What does it have? Yeah. Okay. James says, yes, I asked him to pull this sound. This thing is incredible, folks. If you haven't seen it yet, just go back to YouTube, Google, ESPN, or whatever. It's displayed there pretty prominently. But with 2 seconds left and a for sure going into overtime, the comeback kids here, and this guy do this.
Jokic has it. Clock ticks. Got to put one up. Jokic for the win. Oh, it's good. Jokic got it off in time, and the Nuggets win it. Are you kidding me?
Folks, that was it. You don't get it from that clip. Dude was near the half court line, 37 feet from the hoop, and he throws this thing up with a dude in his face, and it goes in. They flash the camera over to Steph Curry, who, chews on his mouth guard and all that, and the look on his face was like disbelief meets depression. I don't know, like, are you kidding? Like, this, unbelievable. This dude was crazy. And Jokic isn't a big demonstrator of emotion and stuff on the court. He's running around, arms in the air, the team mobbing him. Go back and watch the video. I watched it 3 times. 1, because the shot was so incredible, but 2, just the pure joy from his teammates on this. This guy is amazing. That shot was ridiculous. And so our Nuggets pull this thing off, and you see stuff like that, and you begin to let your mind wander into things like Team of Destiny and all this other stuff. But holy smokes, I wish I had watched the whole game, but the end of it, worth the price of admission right there. Just absolutely incredible. I think next up for them at this weekend, I think they play the Pistons, the hapless. I think the Pistons have won half a game, I think, this year or something like that. But that's what's going on. The other thing I want to talk to you about, but we'll cut away for a break first because there's just not a good segue into it, is some of the stuff that took place outside of Colorado. Big stuff that touches upon crime. You can probably guess where I'm going. And I'll get into that. But I love the texters because they've already hit me with some stuff relevant to what we talked about this morning. I'll read those to you. One is somebody sent me a picture of Robert Duvall from 1979's Francis Ford Coppola epic Apocalypse Now. I wish I had asked James to pull that sound because if you'll remember there's 2 iconic scenes that come from that, in my opinion. If you remember, he's a Cav major, air Cav, which, cross sabers and the helicopters and stuff. And he's trying to get the dude from the little squad, the unit that's going out there trying to hunt down Colonel Kurtz. He's trying to get the guy who apparently is some national surfer to surf in, I think it's the Mekong, but with the VC around and all this. And there's Robert Duvall talking to him about doing it. He's like, Charlie, don't surf. Charlie, don't surf. Well, when I was Charlie Company at Airborne School 100 years ago, every unit, every company has their motto. That was us. So we'd be called to attention and we'd yell out, Charlie, don't surf. That was from that scene. And then the other one you'll remember is as they're coming up on the coastline with a village there, and they're about to light them up with missiles and napalm and stuff. You can hear them click on the music from Wagner's Ride of the Valkyrie. You remember that bum ba 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 bum ba ba ba, and they're coming in. It's an incredible scene. All of that, Robert Duvall. That is a great reference, texter. Thank you for that. Here's another one, George. I'm guessing you'll discuss the town halls, and my comment is this: the last question to Haley would not have been asked had she not been a woman. Elaborating, I didn't see the town halls, folks. I got to tell you, there was so much stuff going on at home last night. And I normally get to bed before this because of the show. I didn't get to bed till after 10, maybe 10:30. So that tells you I had a ton going on. I wanted to go back and watch those today. Something else. Walter Mondale was not part of the Ford administration. Did I say Ford? If I said Ford, that is a huge mistake. Vice President to Carter. If I said Ford, that was just crack smoke crazy. I was having a Biden moment there. Please forgive me. Unless she petitions on, I wonder if she'll clear the assembly. I think there's enough animosity about Lauren's carpetbagging with the people who show up at assembly. They may split the votes too much, and she may miss it. I don't think so, Lori, and let me tell you why. Hypothetically, Trump comes out and endorses her at the assembly. what happens. And does she even need to go through the assembly? I think she does to try to keep people off the ballot. But let's say she's got plenty of money to hit that low petition amount. What is it, a couple thousand to petition on the ballot? She'll do that as a safety net to make sure that she only needs 10%. But even at the assembly, folks, I don't know. Can you keep her below 10%? I don't think so. I think for her too, maybe you don't go through the assembly. I think she will, but let's say you don't, so that you can allow more people onto the ballot. Why would you do that? Because she knows that the more people on the ballot for the primary, the easier it is for her to win the primary, because it lowers that vote threshold she needs to win. Do the math. If you got 5 people on the primary ballot, and that is a ton, you don't need 50%. You don't need 40%. You don't need 30%. You need like 20% plus 1. Something like that would be enough potentially to win this thing, but she'll get way more than that. So I don't know. I don't know. She may have to petition on, but she may do the hybrid too. Another text with Mike Litch stepping into the race after Lauren's announcement. Does he know something? No, but you also know this. Mike's hard charger. Mike's super smart guy, tough guy. He also knows that area where he's from. And I think Mike sees probably what Lori's talking about too. They're both from that up north area. Mike sees a potential here to say a whole bunch of things that will resonate with voters in that area that are about, I'm from here, I've been from here, I've served from here, all of those things. Totally legitimate issues. At the end of the day, are they going to work? If you make me bet right now, they won't. But let's see what happens. Her biggest risk would be if it was one-on-one. That's my opinion. If it would, because I think the anti-Lauren vote, and there will be one, if it gets split up between 2 or more candidates, I think she wins. That's just how it ends up happening. We saw that with what took place, in my opinion, back in 2010 with Hickenlooper, when Mays and Tancredo were dividing up the vote and causing all that other stuff. That's how you get Hickenloopers and stuff like that. So I'm not saying Lauren's Hickenlooper. I'm just saying you can see how the math works out. Another text. Oh, an old movie with Robert Duvall, Boo Radley and To Kill a Mockingbird. That's a great reference. Obviously not a huge role for him in terms of the actual speaking part, but that was a pivotal character in both the book and the movie right there. That's a great reference as well. When we come back, I do want to talk a little bit more about something else that took place outside the state that's in the news. Took place in Iowa. It's 7:00. We're going to have on the CEO of the Denver Chamber of Commerce. His name's J.J. Ament. He's a friend. J.J. does a lot of good work with the Common Sense Institute, and just in time for the Super Bowl of stock show events, the National Western Stock Show kicked off a couple days ago, the big parade through Denver yesterday. I love seeing those images of the big longhorns walking down the street by Union Station. I love that imagery. I wish I had gone down there, just too busy. But J.J. is going to come on to talk about this is what the true financial impact on the Denver metro area is when the National Western shows up. It's staggering. It's shocking how much money this thing brings in for the city. And then maybe he'll even talk to us about what he knows about the future, because the stock show is going to have a ton of money thrown into it to grow it, modernize it, build a new facility. I've seen some of the drawings. Incredible stuff. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to cut away for a break. Not before I tell you about our good friends at Roll 'em Out Shelves, which I normally don't do in the 6:00 hour, but I need you 6:00 listeners to listen to this too. There's a mother-son team, Joyce and Brent Tolliver. They've been to my house. I mean, I trust these folks. I trust them so much. I asked them, give me a quote. Come to my house. Show me the magic that you can do. My intention is to try to get to their showroom and warehouse at some point too, but they were like, no, we'll come to you. Don't worry about it. We'll come down and see you. And they did. And they walked through the house. Such nice people, genuinely nice people. And obviously, Brent is the guy that gets down on his hands and knees and goes around and looks at all the cabinetry and does all these high-tech digital lasery measurements and puts them into this thing. And they craft this series of options for you to make all the cabinets in your house just more usable, which you see what they have available on the website at rollemoutshelves.com, rollemoutshelves.com. And you think to yourself, my God, this is so easy. It only takes a couple hours once you ink the deal with them for them to come out and do their thing. And pricing completely awesome and competitive, and no pressure. They just come out and say, look, here's what we can do. Here's some of the options you probably didn't know about. And there were some, and I liked it. They use great quality wood, the whole thing. And the reason I want you to do this is because right now, as you look at your house, you may think, man, I'd love to do a complete upgrade of the whole thing, but I don't have the money. Well, start somewhere that's actually functional. And that would be with the roll them out shelves. And these people do it. It's completely affordable. They can transform your home for less than $1,000. Just give them a call at 303-475-9601. 303-475-9601. Get Brent and Joyce in your house. You're going to be so happy that just meeting them will make you feel happy. But when you see the service and the product and all that, you'll be even more thrilled. And when you call them, say, hey, I heard about you from Clown Show on the radio there, George. He said a lot of great things. I'm going to ask you to prove it, and they will. Hey, when we come back, we're going to get to this new topic, something that took place out of Iowa. We'll get to your calls as well. And your text. Stick around. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS.
Want to take your favorite radio station wherever you go? Well, now there's an app for that. No matter where you are, stream your favorite shows. Tap the app to listen to podcasts. Talk back to your favorite local hosts.
At the tone, leave a message.
Call the show. Set your alarm. Enter contests and win prizes. All in the palm of your hand. Available now for iOS and Android devices in the App Store or Google Play. And best of all, it's free. Download today.
Just a small town girl right here on 710 KNUS. George Brauchler with the George Show. Thanks for sticking around. Just before the school day kicked off for the second semester here after the holiday break, in a school district about 25 miles, I think, away from Des Moines, Iowa, at a place called, it was in the McCreary. Oh, never mind. It was in the Perry Community School District. Forgive me. 17-year-old student from Perry High School. I'm just not going to say his name. It just doesn't do anything to advance the story to know it. But a disgruntled 17-year-old student filmed himself inside of a bathroom and posted it on TikTok. And inside that video, there was the song Stray Bullet playing in the background by some band that I just don't listen to and am not familiar with. It showed a picture of him as well inside a bathroom stall with the little written caption on it saying "Time to wait." And then he had a blue duffel bag with him. No, it says "Now we wait." And it had a blue duffel bag with him on the ground. That duffel bag concealed a pump action shotgun and a handgun, which he then left the bathroom for at about 7:47 a.m. And this kind of stuff ensued. Let's get an update on it right here in terms of what took place.
My name's Mitch Mortvet. I'm an assistant director with the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation. At 7:37 a.m. On January 4th, 2024, the Perry Police Department responded to an active shooter event at Perry High School. Meanwhile, Dallas County Communications was also receiving multiple 911 calls of an active shooter at the high school. Perry police officers responded within minutes. They immediately made entry and witnessed students and faculty either sheltering in place or running from the school. Once inside, they located multiple individuals with gunshot wounds. Officers immediately attempted to locate the source of the threat and quickly found what appeared to be the shooter with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. As additional officers responded, a systematic search of the school took place. Officers located during the search of the school an improvised explosive device. The state fire marshal and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms rendered the device safe. Numerous officers from multiple agencies were able to secure the school and verify no additional threats. At the same time, first responders were rendering aid to the victims, who were later transported to area hospitals. The shooter has been identified as 17-year-old Dylan Butler, a student at Perry High School. Butler was armed with a pump-action shotgun and a small caliber handgun. Butler also made a number of social media posts in and around the time of the shooting.
The governor of Iowa, who's a superstar, her name's Kim Reynolds, she had this to say.
Our hearts are heavy today, and our prayers are with the Perry community. This strikes at the heart of everything that we hold dear. This senseless tragedy has shaken our entire state to the core, and I want this community to know that every Iowan stands with you. It's impossible to understand why anything like this happens, but again, I want you to know that we'll work tirelessly to get the answers so that we can prevent it from happening again.
And this is just a couple weeks before the Iowa caucuses, which, as you know, at least for the Republicans, the Dems have undone everything based on Biden's pledges to make South Carolina number one for them because, of course, South Carolina is what ensured his victory in the primary process against Big Bernie. Iowa's number one for Republicans getting this thing kicked off. And so 2 weeks from now, they're going to have the Iowa caucuses. This thing right here, when it happens, I've just got so many thoughts about it. It strikes home for me, as you can imagine, in a way that's probably different from anybody else on the radio, just because of the career that I've had. But some of my observations initially are these. First, obviously a horror and a tragedy. And for any parent who's had kids in school, in a public school setting in particular, this is the kind of thing that keeps you up at night, because when you send your kids to school, you just trust that you're going to see them again at the end of the day, either because you've picked them up or someone else has and you're going to see them at home. You just take that for granted because schools have always been a safe place to go. Your big worries are things like, did I pack a lunch? How are they doing academically? Are they sitting next to a bully? Is there bullying going on? Especially at 6th grade, folks. Of the victims, the deceased victim, the one that was murdered, was a 6th grader. That's 11 or 12 years old. And you don't worry about your kids you didn't used to worry about your kids getting shot. And then all of a sudden we had Columbine, but even that was at a high school. This guy, this 17-year-old from a nearby Perry High School, targeted this particular school. One of the shot, who was, I think, rushed to the hospital with multiple gunshot wounds, a lot of the details are still being developed, was the principal. And then there were other students that were shot too. I think it was a total of 5 victims. Dan Marburger's the name of the principal. But you just don't think in those terms. And this is no knock on the, I'm a huge school choice guy. My kids all went to charter school. That's the risk too. But if you homeschool your kids, you never worry about a school shooter like that, right? Like, you homeschool your kids, and God bless you for doing that. This is never a thought in your mind. If there's a school shooter at a homeschool, that's a completely different issue, right? But when you drop your kids off, you are committing their safety to someone else that you probably couldn't get on the phone very quickly. So one of my thoughts is, this thing just haunts parents at a different level, and grandparents too. This just haunts you that this can happen. And you begin to think in terms of, my God, what can we do to prevent this? And there are steps we can take. And they talk about hardening the target, hardening the school, and the amount of money that has been spent. My God, Texas is prepared to spend, I can't remember, $1 billion or some incredible amount of money to try to do things like upgrade the glass in all the buildings to make it bulletproof, either through some film or new construction. I don't know. Just that alone is built into that. This has become an industry. And you and I can't fathom that from when we were in school. That was never an issue. I don't remember a gun ever being at school that wasn't attached to a Lakewood police officer. I mean, that would have been such a huge scandal. And now, this is my next point. This thing has happened with such regularity. It's not even the lead story anywhere, right? It is right at the moment as it happens. But you go to Drudge. That's not Drudge. Top of Drudge right now is 2024 kickoff, Biden warns. And you start scrolling through this, and it's about New York subway trains collide. How Sotomayor, Supreme Court Justice, made millions. Trump and Epstein. And you got to scroll your way down to try to get to any mention of this. What's happened to us? Are those the issues that are more dominant? I mean, I think to some extent we've become used to this. This thing on Drudge, as you go down, it's in the middle of the top, but there's no picture associated. It's just a link that says terror in small town Iowa as gunfire erupts at high school. That's it. Not multiple links, just those. I mean, just that one. I recommend, by the way, going to Daily Mail. Daily Mail turns out every single time to be so comprehensive and detailed in what it does with covering these stories. It's just not. It has a picture of this murderer who took his own life, by the way, in the school. There's no manhunt, nothing like that. But some of the other stories that have come out are whether or not this 17-year-old was bullied and was transgender. And now a bunch of the stories from the left-wing media is, hey, it looks like the right-wing influencers and media folks are gleefully announcing that this guy may have been transgender or had gender identity issues or whatever. That's where we've gone with this. I think it's important to get to the root cause of what led to this, because in doing that, only then can we understand, how do we nip this thing at the root? How do we prevent this from happening? The knee-jerk reaction by many, including Jason Crow, who is the congressman for the 6th Congressional District and a veteran, by the way, and a patriot, okay? Let's get past this idea that because you're a Democrat, you're a traitor to your country and you engage in treason. Dude's anti-gun, no doubt about it, but dude's a patriot. 82nd Airborne guy. I mean, went to war, So let's just end that conversation there and talk about the fact that we disagree with him on this fundamental rights policy. He's an anti-gun dude, not a big Second Amendment dude. He would disagree with that description, but you know what I'm talking about. He rushed to social media to talk about, hey, we can do things better. So expect there to be some other conversation now using this as an example. That's the other thing I wanted to talk to you about. We're going to take a break. We'll come back. But I'll tell you about, when we talk about the weapons used, what law could we pass that will stop this? That's the scary part for me as a dad. What's the law we're going to pass that could stop something like this? If you have it, and we've had this conversation every damn time we've had a mass shooting. If you've got the answer to this, you got to call and tell me. 303-696-1971. I don't see it. I don't see what the answer is here. I don't see how to stop this. I can only see how we can try to minimize it and then provide some sort of prevention at the point of attack or a response, an immediate response. And cops here were 7 minutes away. That's close, but that's not close enough. 7 minutes since somebody called 911 to say gunman, active shooter in the school. 7 minutes. This break, how long is this break going to be, James? James says, this break that we're about to take is 5 minutes. That's 2 minutes shy of how long it took the police to rush to the school. During this break that we take, I want you to picture the 911 call coming through and try to envision in your mind what can go on in a school with a gunman who has outgunned, they're outarmed everybody in that school. That's just in 5 minutes. Stick around. We're going to come back. We'll take your text, your calls in this, 303-696-1971. It's the George Show, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS, finishing up the last segment here of the 6 o'clock hour before we get to CEO of the Denver Chamber, J.J. Ament, to talk about the National Western Stock Show, day 2 of 16 of that huge, massive event. I plan on going and taking the boys to it. Talking about this horrific mass shooting that took place in Iowa, it certainly won't get the coverage that it would have 5-10 years ago for a couple reasons. One, it's just happened so much. It seems like we've become a bit callous to it, and I'm not blaming us. This is what the human psyche does, is you try to build up these scabs to protect you from the tragedy and the horror of this. Secondly, though, gunman's dead by his own hand, and that means no trial, no long thing. So, this is where we're at. The guns used were a pump action shotgun and a small caliber handgun. We'll get to know more details as this thing gets fully investigated and revealed to us. But think about the gun laws that Colorado has passed recently and ask yourselves which ones would have prevented this. I mean, you go back to the time of Aurora Theater and Sandy Hook, our immediate reaction was to say, oh, we need a magazine capacity ban. What? I'm almost positive whatever we learn about these two handguns, that won't have made any damn difference. Then we did universal background checks. Well, it's illegal for 17-year-olds in Iowa to possess these two firearms, so that wouldn't have mattered. Pretty sure he didn't walk into a gun store and do this. Think about some of the other ones that we've passed recently. A ban on anyone under the age of 21 taking possession of firearms, except in limited circumstances. Well, dude's 17. No chance that would have. He did not show up and say, please give me legal firearms, so that wouldn't have mattered. I mean, what are we looking at here? What if we'd have had an assault weapon ban? Nope, that wouldn't have stopped this. Is it the safe storage law that we have that seeks to punish people who have weapons in their house for personal protection that say, no, you've got to keep them locked up so it's harder for you to get to them when you need them to defend yourself in your home? Is it that law? Well, we're going to find out, but I doubt it. It's, we should have a law that mandates trigger locks or something. That would have made a difference. I don't think so. I think the point of this here is you can't come up with legislation that's going to fix this. Short of you magicking away all guns, good and bad, by the way, from the good guys in the back, short of you being able to magic them away, you're not going to legislate your way out of this. This is about evil, and evil will win in some circumstances. So what do we do? I mean, I'm not a guy that says I want every kid to go to school armed and trained so that they can defend themselves. I'm not that guy either, but it's undeniable that 7 minutes from a mass shooting is too damn long. And that's what happens in rural Colorado and rural Iowa. What do you tell those people? Is it having an SRO? I think it absolutely is having at least one SRO in every school. It's a lot of money. Is it considering programs like FASTER, which we've had Laura Carno on here, to train teachers to be armed for the school districts that approve that, and other students don't know who it is? Yes, got to be that, right? Like, how do you meet evil when it shows up with more bad things to cause harm than you have the ability to respond to? I think the other underlying question here is, why is this happening? Why is this happening more than it did when you and I were kids? And I've had some texters come in here and chime in on this. Oh, and it's mental health. And I don't deny the mental health thing. That's real. We got to ask why that is. But at the end of the day, I think the other thing we need to do when we look in the mirror is we got to acknowledge we've just devalued life. All life. We just say life is only as valuable as what someone else thinks of it. I mean, whether it's euthanasia, I mean, well, we allow people to tap out now for all sorts of things. They're talking about broadening it. I saw an article like, should anorexics be allowed to let themselves die? No. No, you shouldn't. I mean, we stopped treating life as divinely inspired or produced or special. You can abort a baby up until the moments after it's born. Life is only valuable now if someone else thinks it has value. Well, guess what? There are folks out there who not only think that life isn't valuable, but that are willing to take years to assuage whatever darkness sits in their heart or their heads. That's the underlying problem here. It's not just the guns and the schools and the access to all that stuff. Is we have created a society of people who just have stopped valuing life. That's where we got to focus. Listen, when we come back, we're going to shift gears to something much nicer. J.J. Ament, National Western Stock Show. Stick around. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. Welcome back to hour 2 of 4 for the George Show on this Friday, the 5th of January. You heard the news, of course, tomorrow, the anniversary of the events that took place at the Capitol on January the 6th. I can't believe it's been 3 freaking years, but 3 years ago, there's going to be wall-to-wall coverage of that and commentary on that on the mainstream legacy media. That's not going to be us. We're not going to talk about that right now because we have some good, awesome local news to discuss. I don't want to go Keith Jackson here, but the granddaddy of them all, not the Rose Bowl, no, the other thing, and that's like the Super Bowl of all things cattle. I think that's what they call it. Is the National Western Stock Show is in town. There's no better guest to have on the line than someone who knows it inside and out. Unfortunately, we couldn't find that person, so instead we're turning to J.J. Ament. He is the CEO for the Denver Chamber. He's a buddy, also wicked smart guy, big local dude as well, and he knows things about the impact of the National Western Stock Show on Denver. Hey, sir, thanks for joining us.
Good morning, George. I'm glad to be with you.
It's good to see you and to hear you sober. No, I'm kidding. I told Cinnamon, I'm like, JJ's going to do a great job as long as he's sober this time, and that's fantastic. Do us a favor for folks that don't remember all the great stuff you have done in the community. Just give us a little bit of your background leading up to you becoming the CEO of the Denver Chamber.
Well, it's a great job as CEO of the Denver Metro Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber is celebrating its 158th birthday this year, so it's about 9 years older than Colorado is a state. And I'm a lifelong Coloradan, grew up on my family's farm and cattle ranch out in Logan County. Spend my time a little bit in agriculture, a lot in investment banking before I came to work on economic development activities at the Chamber and spend some time on the state's Economic Development Commission. And then 2 years now, I've been in the role as president and CEO of Colorado's largest and oldest Chamber of Commerce.
You're also weirdly ageless. Like I just saw you however many months ago at that dinner, and I'm like, could you please get gray hair or wrinkles or something? Because I feel like I'm aging. Like at one point I thought, yeah, we could have been age peers. Now I feel like I could be your older, in less good shape brother. I mean, what's going on? What's your secret?
Well, I'll take it. But I get to do a lot of really spectacular things as I get to travel the U.S. and the world, explaining why Colorado is a great place to live and do business. And part of that is our Western heritage in Colorado, and that leads us to the National Western Stock Show, which is the Super Bowl of livestock shows, as you mentioned. And the Common Sense Institute here in Colorado just released a new economic study that shows the economic impact of the National Western at $171 million every year.
Dang, that's
and
real.
That's enormously significant, not just for our rural farming and ranching families, but certainly for the urban parts of Colorado. If I've said before, from an economic development standpoint, if the stock show didn't exist, we would need to invent it. Because nothing puts people in hotels and restaurants in 16 days in January in Denver, Colorado, like the stock show does.
16 days. There's something else. This study, which is like all CSI studies, I mean, it's just fantastic, chock full of great data, but it also makes the data tangible and a little more relevant when it compares it to other things. Talk about the number of attendees that go over this 16-day period.
Yeah, this year we'll have more than 700,000 people attend the National Western from all 50 states this year. Last year, 48 states. This year, all 50. And 33 different countries from around the world will be in Colorado to participate in activities around the National Western. And that's all highlighted in the Common Sense Institute's report. And for folks who really want to see the details, they can go view the report directly at commonsenseinstituteco.org and get all of the details. But it really makes Colorado the center of the universe as far as livestock and agriculture is concerned for the next 16 days, and gives us a chance to highlight how important agriculture is to Colorado's economy. Because while the stock show is $170 million a year, our farming and ranching families in Colorado put $47 billion into the economy on an annual basis, and it's still one of our largest and most important industries in this state.
Well, do you know, JJ, where that ranks with other industries? Like what's above it? If there is anything?
So computer sciences is large, aerospace is large, but agriculture is second, third, or fourth, depending on the particular year and market prices. And that goes to show the challenges that some of our farming and ranching families have, because compared to those other industries, farmers and ranchers are about the only folks I know who buy everything retail and sell their final product wholesale. That's just the opposite of what every other industry does. So it's really a unique position that our farming and ranching families have as a business proposition, even though what they produce is essential for every other resident of Colorado and resident of the world. They grow what we eat.
Will they be introducing wolves at this year's National Western Stock Show?
Well, that's one of those things, George, that's so important about Stock Show, is trying to help bridge the urban-rural divide that continues to seem to grow in our state, and
so true,
and helping our city cousins understand that some public policy, and we can think about this as the legislature's just around the corner and ballot initiatives are banging around. There's some public policy in politics that may be suitable for our urban centers that is just not suitable for rural Colorado. And yet sometimes the vote comes from along the Front Range, and it neglects the needs and wishes of our rural communities. So one of the things that the Denver Metro Chamber is certainly committed to is making sure that all of Colorado achieves economic success. And that means paying special attention to rural communities and farming and ranching families who are essential to Colorado's economy and to our way of life, but may not have the numbers needed to outvote the Front Range on particular policy issues. And wolves is the perfect example of that. And the Denver Metro Chamber opposed wolf reintroduction, and that was opposed by rural Colorado too. But it's one of those examples of why we need to work so closely together and be good partners between our urban and rural communities.
We're talking with J.J. Ament. He's the CEO of the Denver Metro Chamber of Commerce, 158 years old. I would say
Not
this
me, the chamber, George. The chamber.
Well, you could be the undead. I'm telling you, based on the fact someone's going to pull a picture up from like 1890 of the Denver, and you will be in the background there with a mustache or something. People are like, oh, it's like the vampire Lestat, the vampire Ament. The other thing is, I think for a lot of people listening, they've heard about the National Western Stock Show. There are people in Colorado, in the metro area, who've never been. And I just think that's amazing. That's like growing up in Colorado and having never gone skiing. It's just one of those things that you just got to carve out time to go. And we used to take the kids every single year. And then I've missed like the last 2 years. It is on the agenda to get the kids there, at least the two that aren't in college right now, to this thing before the end of the 16 days, because you can't describe it well enough, right? Like if you just sit back and think, oh, there's livestock. It's not like that. I mean, some of the nights are incredible, especially when they do the rodeo stuff, when you get to the championship round. Incredible stuff. It's just so much fun. And the kids love it too. You see all these kids running around in their little cowboy hats and their boots. You see the kids from rural Colorado with the calves they've raised and the different. I mean, it's an amazing experience, and it really reminds you of what's unique and special about Colorado.
That's so true. 30 different rodeos will happen. It's one of the top 4 rodeos in the United States. 11 horse shows, dozens of other opportunities. There's acres and acres of shopping and food. It is something literally for kids of all ages, from little ones to grown-ups. People will need to go quick. NationalWestern.com is where you can buy tickets. Those rodeos and horse shows will sell out before the end of the show. There really is nothing like Stock Show. And so for everyone local, don't miss it. It's a really cool opportunity to go out and see all of the activities and the history and the Western heritage. And then, let's remember too, the whole reason we keep our Christmas lights on through January started at Stock Show. It was, at least in the 1920s, Christmas decorations around town were left up. And then starting in the 1950s, everyone began leaving their Christmas lights up through Stock Show to welcome those folks coming from other states and around the world to participate. So it's part of Colorado's heritage for sure for the last 118 years. And we certainly see a bright future for the National Western for the next 100.
Well, in our household, too, we've pushed that out to President's Day, which coincides with the HOA letter that gets sent out that says, time to take them down, right? Like, this is it. You're in February, move on. I want to talk a little bit about this. again, comprehensive and awesome analysis by the Common Sense Institute. And you can find the report, as JJ said, at commonsenseinstituteco.org. This more than 700,000 attendees. I love it when they do this. It is the equivalent of filling every single seat at Empower Home at Mile High. I don't know why we even call it Empower Home, and I know you know why I don't. Mile High Stadium for every single Broncos home game. That's how many people over 16 days are going to come to the stock show. That's incredible. Some of the other stuff too, they tried to compare what will be brought in over 16 days versus some other entities. So as JJ said, $171 million over 16 days. CU Buffs football, even with Prime there to draw all that attention, will bring in $113 million for all of its season home games. In 16 days, boom, we eclipsed that by a ton. Denver Nuggets, the finals, huge economic, but $25 million. NBA All-Star Game, $70.5 million. And the DCPA, which is a wonderful thing, I also need to put that on the calendar, of course, $300 million. There just isn't, the one thing I don't see it compared with, JJ, is Taylor Swift. I just don't know. How does it compare to Tay-Tay?
Yeah, well, she's remarkable, right? Maybe we should get Taylor to come back to National Western just to boost the numbers for maybe the 120th anniversary in a couple of years.
That would be genius. Speaking of the future, tell us what you know about there's an expansion that's been planned and discussed and funded and is underway now. It's been for years. What's going on?
Yeah, both the private supporters of Stock Show and the city of Denver and the state of Colorado have committed to the new National Western Center, and more than $1 billion is being invested in new facilities, and that's part of the economic contribution. All to make Stock Show resilient and ready for the next 100 years, so that we become really the center of food and water research and water stewardship, and how are we going to affordably provide nutritious quality food for a few billion more people on the planet in the years ahead. And that research and innovation is going to take place at the National Western Center, and that it really does keep Colorado on the world stage. As I travel around the world as the chamber executive, Colorado's famous around the world for agriculture, livestock in particular. 4 of our top 10 global exports in Colorado are livestock products. So when you're traveling,
what are they? What are they?
Yeah, livestock, primarily beef and swine, and increasingly Colorado lamb. So those products are what puts Colorado on the map, along with our aerospace and computer sciences and tech industries. But it's a hugely important opportunity for us, and the community is coming together to make that investment to continue the legacy of the National Western and support our farming and ranching families. And then don't forget, too, the National Western is still a 501c3 nonprofit whose primary objective is education. And all of the resources that come together at the National Western are then made available in scholarships, some $600,000 in scholarships given every year to students in Colorado, Wyoming who pursue agriculture, education, or rural medicine.
It says 3.6 million on educational and scholarship programs and all this stuff. I did not know that about the top 4 exports for us being beef and then swine, which I presume is a bigger word for pork. And then I didn't know that
frozen and fresh.
Yeah, I didn't know that about lamb. That's not bad.
Nice. I saw what you did there. That's good.
Boom. That's what I did. A little goat boy.
It's domestic too, George. You know, of the top 10 agricultural producing counties in the United States, 9 of them are in California. But the one that is not in California is Weld County, Colorado. And having that rural and livestock and agriculture center adjacent to an urban center with all the technology and innovation that's occurring in business, being able to put those two things right next door to each other is something that Colorado does as well or better than any other place in the world. And it really creates us an opportunity to have a real leadership position on water and food as we go into the next 100 years.
You know, it's not just the economic benefit to the metro area as highlighted by this great study by the Common Sense Institute, but it's the idea that if we don't make these investments in the future of the National Western Stock Show, there'd be no guarantee that it couldn't pick up and move a little bit to the east, to an Oklahoma or down to a Texas or something like that. I mean, that's very possible too. What a huge, devastating loss that would be based on this report.
For sure. And that's why the Chamber looks at it just like we look at other economic development opportunities and assets of our community, and want to make sure that we do everything we need to keep Colorado competitive in rural and livestock and ag, and make sure that we are ready for those that would love to have stock show in their own communities. And then, again, the importance of highlighting farming and ranching families to Colorado. Not only are they growing everything that we eat, but our farming and ranching families in the state are providing wildlife habitat, open space, water stewardship, in addition to nutritious and affordable food for us in the world. So the contributions made that get highlighted at the stock show really highlight for everyone how important our rural farming and ranching families are to the thing that we think of when we call it Colorado.
I'm impressed with the report too. Is just a way of providing that extra justification for us to continue to patronize it, but also to support it. And you know that those other states that would want to gobble this thing up, everything you just said about it, they recognize, dang, if we could get that out here, what a huge boon to our people. So, to show weakness on this issue of support for the National Western, either by attendance or support for the future development of it, is just inviting something bad happening. And that is, an entity like this moving on. My hope is that we're doing enough that we've secured them for the foreseeable future.
Absolutely. We absolutely should. We compete in a market as an economy just like everyone else. Our market happens to be other metropolitan regions and states around the United States and sometimes around the world. And when we have crown jewel assets like the National Western, we as a community, whether we're in the urban parts of Colorado or the rural parts of Colorado, we need to unite behind the National Western and make sure that it continues to become, continues to be and continues to become that essential asset for livestock and agriculture, and not just in Colorado, but really around the world.
I did not tell you I was going to ask you about this, but solve the migrant crisis. No, I'm kidding. I'm not going to. We're out of time to have that part of the conversation. We'll have to have you back at another time to answer some more of those political hot potato questions. But you've done a great job on this. I love that you're the voice on the Common Sense Institute's report on the National Western Stock Show, which you can find at commonsenseinstituteco.org. Common Sense Institute with the little Colorado thing, CO at the end, .org. J.J. Ament, CEO of the Denver Metro Chamber, perhaps one of the undead, yet to be seen. Thanks for joining us, man.
Good to be with you, George. Thanks.
Great job. Happy New Year, buddy. That was JJ. Great dude. Super smart. You can just hear that guy. He just knows stuff, and I'm glad he does, because the position he's in is a pretty powerful one in terms of being a supporter of the economic drivers that keep the Denver area afloat. You can talk about all the state policy in the world, and they certainly weigh in on it, but man, the metro area is a big generator. And I love that his focus early on in the conversation was, we've got to bridge the dang divide between rural and urban. And that's truer than you can possibly imagine. When the number of people that are in the Gold Dome hail from that Denver Boulder corridor, their care and interest in the things that don't touch them, like rural Colorado, is so de minimis. Same thing with the voters. I mean, it was the Denver Boulder voters that released livestock hunting and killing wolves into the state of Colorado. I don't know if you've read those articles, by the way, as an aside. The people that were releasing the wolves promised Coloradans, specifically ranchers, we are not going to release problematic wolves into this area. You know what I mean? We just love and all the pictures of the wolves with their pretty eyes staring at the camera, surrounded by snow and trees, and they look like they could be domesticated, and they can't. But instead, they went to Oregon. Oregon said, hey, we've captured, I don't know why killed, but captured these predatory wolves. We'd like to move them out of Oregon. That Oregon hated them that much. We don't want you in the state anymore. Colorado said, we'll take them and release them into the wild here in Colorado. No joke, not made up. You can Google it. I mean, that would be like Oregon saying, hey, we've got a whole bunch of aggravated robbers and rapists here that we just can't seem to keep under control. Can we move them to Colorado? And Colorado said, sure, Sure, we'll take them. We'll figure out a way to make them law-abiding. That's what we've done. But I really appreciate JJ's focus on trying to encourage not only the National Western Stock Show to stay around, but to encourage us bridging that rural-urban divide, which is so very real. Listen, if you want to make a comment, I've got some texts already on the National Western. You going to this thing? I haven't picked the day yet. I'm trying to figure out what's still available online and how it matches up with the kids' schedules, because they go back to school next week, if you can believe. Yep, go back to school a week from Tuesday, this past Tuesday. That can't be right. The 9th, Christmas break is already coming to an end. Yeah, I'm not going to get them there before that, so I got to figure out a way to get them there for one of the evening shows. And they have stuff throughout the day, every day. It's just such a great event and so uniquely Colorado. You ought to check them out. Go to that National Western Stock Show website, but also check out this report at coloradoinstituteco.org. Hey, listen, give us a call, 303-696-1971. We'll keep talking about this topic, but I want to revisit the Iowa One and Solutions because we had so many texts about it. It's George Brauchler on the George Show, 710 KNUS. I just saw an ad for something super cool that I hope there's some tickets left for in September. I can't even remember where. Def Leppard's coming to town as part of a bigger thing with Journey, and I can't remember who else, but I'm like, what the? I don't know why it spoke to me, but all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I gotta figure out a way to get tickets to this. And you'd think that the radio guys get access to it, as you've heard Billy talk about, who's been in the business forever. That day has long since passed, but Def Leppard bringing on the Heartache. Is it Heartache or Heartbreak? It's Break. James just correct me. Bringing on the Heartbreak. They're going to be here, I want to say like September 8th. Also, news that came out. Billy Joel, July the 12th at Coors Field. Oh, yeah. Tickets aren't on sale yet. They go on sale depending upon whether you're a Verizon or City card holder or something like that. You can start getting them as early as I think like January 8th or 9th, which is just next week. But oh my gosh, I want to come out and see that guy before he's gone. I've never seen the old BJ live. I missed the whole, dueling piano thing he did with EJ Elton John, but man, I want to go and see this thing. And what a great time to be at Coors Field right there in the middle of July. But that's out there as well. By the way, George Brauchler on the George Show, 710 KNUS. My great thanks to J.J. Ament, the CEO of the Denver Metro Chamber of Commerce, a juggernaut and influencer in its own right, and it has been apparently for 158 years, since before we were a state. Talking about the National Western Stock Show and the economic impact, and you can find that study at the Common Sense Institute co.org website, prominently displayed there. I want to shift back to this other topic because we've had text on it. And folks, I know it's Friday, and sometimes we go a little bit lighter on the Friday thing, and there's some national news to talk about. We'll get to the Haley DeSantis town hall thing here later, but whether it's my career or the fact that I'm a father of 4 public school attending kids, 2 of whom are now in college, this school shooting thing in Iowa, whenever something like this happens, a mass shooting at a school, I just think we're obligated to revisit what we've done as a society here and to continue, you and I, to have the conversation through text and calls at 303-696-1971 to discuss what have we done to get here and what is the way forward. And I think what we've seen now with this one, and this is why it's not getting the coverage either. If this 17-year-old had showed up with a semi-automatic rifle, like an AR fill in the blank, or what people misname assault rifles, this would have gotten more coverage. If this guy had been a dude who had Trump all over his social media, this would have gotten more coverage. But we seem to have a guy that, at least, and this is all speculation on my part based on the things that I've read online, you've probably seen this too, that he may have had gender identity things going on, that this may have been the product of bullying. As that develops, we may hear more about that. We may hear more. And then the media, of course, will jump to, hey, is this about us not tolerating the dudes can use girls' bathrooms conversation, or conservative Iowa, and what has it done with the trans community? We'll hear stuff like that. But no one's going to go back and say, not a single one of the gun laws that we've proposed and passed over the last decade plus since Sandy Hook. I mean, it's been 12 years. 2024 will be 12 years since Aurora Theater and Sandy Hook. None of those laws would have made a damn difference here in this case. Now what? They're running out of things to take away from us other than just guns themselves. We got to acknowledge that's not the issue. That's not the issue. You cannot Australia away firearms in America. Not going to happen. You might be able to take them away from the law-abiding, but you're not making all the guns disappear. So it can't be that. So what is it? What's the response to it? For me, I think one of the core things we've done, and this is not fixable overnight or over a single generation, we've just sent the message to this young group of Americans here that life just really doesn't have that much value. That if you don't value someone else's life, the life doesn't have intrinsic value. Some are going to say, hey, is this because we're killing off God in classrooms and in society? I got to believe that's part of it, man. If you don't think life is the product of God, if you don't think that it's divinely inspired, well, then it's easy to be like, well, life here on Earth, human life is just an accident of science and biology. And an accident of science and biology doesn't deserve, I mean, this is what you hear from the people that want to have like their pets become recognized as right-having entities. But it's more than that. I talked to you about euthanasia. I've talked to you about the abortion thing. Think about this with the euthanasia. Just think about this. We've gotten to a place where we will say, as a justification for creating this loose, no concept of due process red flag law, where teachers and Phil Weiser can seek to take your guns from you, that the basis for it is we're trying to save lives, and there are people out there who use guns to take their own lives, and we have to intervene because it's a product of mental illness, and we have to intervene and stop them because life's just too precious, and mental illness and all this other stuff. And that's why we get to take away your Second Amendment rights. Now, I'm not diminishing at all the suicide. That's real. That's real. But those same people are the people that advocate for looser and looser standards and bases for euthanasia, for people showing up to talk to a doctor about, I'm really tired of the way I feel, or I've got this chronic illness and I just don't think life is worth living. And please, you can give me the horror stories about the people who are in chronic pain all the time, but that is not the limitation of how this gets used. They're now debating whether or not people suffering from eating disorders should be allowed to die on their own. No, right? But so it's not the red flag thing. It is not about saving lives. That's garbage. It's about the guns. But we've just created this environment where life is just not that valuable anymore. When you can abort a baby in Colorado past the moment it leaves the mother, or I'm sorry, the birthing person, or whatever the hell they call it, what message are we sending, man? And I don't want to hear any more garbage about, oh, that rarely happens. Okay, if it's not that big a deal, outlaw it. If late-term abortion isn't that big a deal, outlaw it. Limit it to just the life of the mother or the fetus or something. But please, please stop telling me that we need to have abortion up to and including through kindergarten, which is, I think, where Colorado's law is right now. But you create an environment like that, couple that with the political discourse that we have. Think about that. How many people, even on this show, text in, email in, and call in, Joe Biden is a traitor, so-and-so is a traitor, and engage in treason. We got people on the right talking about things like people swinging from the gallows. And we've gotten to the point now where political disagreement has to be coupled with conversations about taking life. You know who hears that? That next generation. And now they associate strong disagreement. If you can talk your way into believing that someone is a threat to the Constitution and the American way of life as you see it and as you define it, they get to forfeit their lives. We get to take their lives from them. All of these things have this sort of unquantifiable cumulative effect on the psyche of people, adults too, but kids, man. This is what's going on in society. So yeah, let's talk about the guns. Let's talk about the short-term solutions like SROs and hardening schools and all that stuff and doing the drills where now, instead of talking about where Timmy and Sally sit in class, one of the things we have to build in is time for them to learn what to do when they turn off the lights and lock the rooms and lay down in the crevices of the classroom during a school shooting. But let's not tackle the real root of this problem, which is society. We've allowed society to just devalue life. Now, listen, I'm a proponent of the death penalty, right? I believe that there has to be an ultimate sanction for ultimate crimes. There has to be, for justice, a way to distinguish between what I'm going to call, and please don't take this the wrong way, a regular murder and something like Aurora Theater. I believe that. But I'll tell you this. If the other side was willing to trade away abortion for the death penalty, if we were in that position, you would get my attention. We could have that conversation. If we were going to protect life, start to stop, I'll have that conversation with you, because that's the kind of change that makes this less of an issue. I got people texting in that says, yeah, I went to school in rural Colorado where kids are driving to school with rifles in their truck. Do you remember things like this happening back then? I don't. I'm sure there was school violence at some level, but come on. This is crazy. Social media is part of this too. I had a good friend who's in education text me and say, it's crazy how unregulated what kids are allowed to consume is. We let them put all sorts of garbage in their heads, and then when they act on it and do something horrific, we excuse it away by saying, whoa, they have these undeveloped brains. We got to treat them like they're differently. Well, let's treat them like they're differently on the front end before they stick those things between their ears. We don't do that either. I don't know, folks. I feel like we're pretty broken here, but I'm open to solutions. 303-696-1971. There's some text coming in. You intend to mandate God? ? You're not offering solutions. No, I don't intend to mandate God. I mean, that's not American either, but it's the opposite. We haven't mandated God. We've killed off God in school. I mean, any idea that, remember back in the day, it seems like it was years ago now, there was discussions about moments of silence in school. How do we honor the kids that want to take a moment to worship and all that stuff? Oh, man, that became hugely controversial. We can't have a moment of silence for that. Instead, we got to have time to talk about how gender is what you make of it. I'm not mandating God, but let's stop killing him off. Do you know what I mean? Let's stop creating an environment where we diminish his existence or impact in people's lives. No, not mandated, but let's just stop discriminating against it. What if we just did that? I was away from the radio for an hour and then tuned you back on. You are fired up. What happened? Well, this thing inflames my passions here because, again, I want to remind you, 5 victims, and I do not consider the 17-year-old a victim who took his own life. 5 victims, including the principal who got shot. It sounds like multiple times, maybe critical condition. Hopefully he's going to be fine. 3 other students injured, but a 6th grader murdered. First day of school back after Christmas break. Damn, man, we've all had 12-year-olds. I mean, maybe 11. Think about what they were doing under the Christmas tree, just days ago. And we've got this crap going on in Iowa, for Christ's sake. I mean, if we can't talk about this problem in real terms and talk about what's ailing society and our role in either being permissive about it or outright promoting it, we are failing our generation and the next. Man, I don't want this for any parent. And here we are. There are parents out there whose lives are changed forever because this thing happened. And I don't know what to do about it. But if the answer is red flag and guns, you're a moron. Provably ineffective, provably false. I don't know, man. I don't know. It's a real struggle here. 303-696-1971 is the number. Jay, I promise I'm going to take you. You're from a rural part of Colorado. Always a good call. I'm going to get to you, but I don't want to cut you off. So let's do this. Let me take a little bit of an early break. We'll come back. We'll get Jay, the other people calling in at 303-696-1971, a line open. And then some of the texts coming in as well. I know it's not an uplifting topic, man, but we have to have this conversation. I just want to hear your solutions. How do we get past this? It's just the guns are the tool, but they're not the problem. Come on, man. They're not the problem. I think the kid had an incendiary device too that had to be dismantled. We're going to outlaw bombs. Oh, spoiler alert, bombs are outlawed. That's not it. We're not going to legislate away evil. Can't happen. Evil is like water. Where there is an opening, it will flow to it. We got to stop the water from showing up, and we got to try to prevent the evil early. We're just not doing it. Hey, listen, let me talk to you a little bit about 2024 from a more positive aspect. You take a look in the mirror if you're a dude and you see that receding hairline, that thinning hair, and you think, oh, man, I am not that old inside my body and inside my mind, but I'm looking older. You don't have to feel that way for 2024 or moving forward. There are so many men out there in Denver, and nobody wears a t-shirt. Hey, I went to go see Rocky Mountain Men's Clinic and they changed my life. But there are tons out there who have. This guarantee procedure, our friend Dr. Tanya Pauls, she's Colorado licensed medical provider. Okay, that says a ton. This sort of guaranteed walk in, walk out, same day, starts working next day, your own hair. What isn't there to love about the idea that you reclaim that youthful look and all the confidence and health benefits that come from that feeling? Why not do that? Give them a call at 720-440-7900, 720-440-7900. That first appointment's only $99, which includes, I said Rocky Mountain Men's Clinic because I, of course, am a moron. Let's do this. Let's cut away for a break while I gather up the right thing here, and we'll continue to have this conversation. I think it's just because I'm so stirred up on this topic. Hey, stick around. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. My favorite part of the old Bon Jovi song from back in the day, another blast from the past, high school days. Love to hear that. George Brauchler with you here on the George Show, 710 KMS. Let me do a quick reset on this live read because as you listen to my little rant in that last segment caused me to completely derail on a live read for such a good group called Rocky Mountain Men's Clinic, which you can check out at RockyMountainMen'sClinic.com. These are the good folks that provide you this simple, easy 10-question, 2-minute quiz on their website to answer the question about whether or not you've got a low testosterone issue. Now, I know for dudes, you think about that and you're like, oh my God, that can't be me. That isn't me. Listen, it just happens. It's not your fault. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. It's part of the aging process. And if you've got that, you've lost that spring in your step, you're sleeping poorly. My God, I am. You just can't seem to get your motor going. The workouts don't seem to be doing as much for you. Maybe it's a low testosterone. Why not find out? Instead of just surfing the web looking for some magic thing, take the quiz. Go to RockyMountainMen'sClinic.com. Take the quiz. Set up the appointment, 720-440-7900, 720-440-7900, like so many other men have. $99 first initial visit. But here's the deal. You say, hey, listen, I want to do this thing. I think I want to move forward and fix my life, make it better. The $99 goes the way of the dodo because it gets rolled into the rest of the treatment. Why not do what so many have done? See the changes. Feel like 2024 is the year you get that health back. Check them out at RockyMountainMen'sClinic.com. Let's get to the phone lines as I promised. They're full right now because this topic is too important to ignore. Jay from Sterling, I promised you'd get time, my man. Tell us what you're thinking.
You got charisma, and I hands down to you, and I admire that. And you got logical thought process, and that's what's missing is logical thought process. You know,
when you
and
look,
you have that.
I appreciate those words, man. But you're in rural Colorado, right? Like when you hear seven minutes from 911 call to showing up at the school, that's an eternity, right? Like at STEM. We got super lucky because the substation was, like a quarter mile away. So they got there in milliseconds, but you're in rural Colorado. What's the answer to this? How do we deal with this?
Well, here's where I look at it. Here's how I see things now that I'm 48 years old. But, we grew up on the farms and, we all had guns. We all grew up hunting and fishing and whatever have you, but I think it goes back to the only conclusion I come up with, it goes back to the parents that didn't grow up with common sense. Like Ronald Reagan said in 1989, common sense ain't so common. And he said that in 89, Reagan did, and he was right. It goes back to the parenting.
Is it the common sense? Is it values? I mean, that's what I'm postulating here is
correct.
That common sense is a big part of it, but it's values. Like we've just changed society.
Absolutely, we did. And I think it was all done by design. I mean, I don't want to get too deep into that, but, they don't understand. I mean, it's like the people that go to the farm, go to the grocery store and they see a carton of eggs. They don't understand all the hard work that we put into this stuff to create the eggs or to grow the feed for the chickens. They don't understand the whole logistics of the whole circle, but,
yeah.
But I always go back to the parents, but they didn't grow up like we did, and they didn't grow up with values and respect. I mean, whether you want to believe in God or not, I mean, I do, but whatever have you, I don't want to go there. But values of self-respect, not so. No matter, it goes back to the old Eagles song. My mommy's too fat and my daddy's too whatever. Get over it, because you got to take personal responsibility for yourself. Personal responsibility for who you are. You can make yourself whoever you want to be. Now you are in control of your own life. You have the ability to change and go into whichever demeanor you want to.
Well, there's a lot of truth in that, Jay. And I agree with you, but there are two things we need to be talking about, and you and I are having part of the conversation. There has to be longer term solutions. And what you're talking about, what I'm talking about when you talk about the values of life, those are longer term generational solutions, but we need the short term ones too. We haven't figured that out. We keep telling ourselves if we just ban enough guns, we can stop evil from showing up. That's never going to happen. It's never, ever going to happen.
That's not the answer. That's what I'm saying. These politicians, they keep going after this. Well, they might as well ban slingshots for God's sake.
Jay,
Or bow-
Jay, buddy,
bow and arrows.
Happy New Year, man. You can hear that music. They're about to cut us off. Thanks, buddy. Thanks for getting the conversation started. Look, Jay's line is open. D, Tony, I promise you hang on. We're going to get you after the top there. I want to keep this going. It's just too important. 303-696-1971. It's George Brauchler on The George Show, 710 KNUS.
Want to take your favorite radio station wherever you go? Well, now there's an app for that. No matter where you are, stream your favorite shows. Tap the app to listen to podcasts. Talk back to your favorite local hosts.
At the tone, leave a message.
Call the show. Set your alarm. Enter contests and win prizes. All in the palm of your hand. Available now for iOS and Android devices in the App Store or Google Play. And best of all, it's free. Download today.
Say goodbye to clutter and hello to convenience when you experience organization transformation in your home. Roll 'em Out Shelves, your clutter transformation experts, create affordable Colorado-crafted organized storage solutions. These custom options will maximize and organize your kitchen and bath storage as Roll 'em Out Shelves carefully designs and builds roll-out drawers to fit your space perfectly to clear the clutter. Contact owners Joyce and Brent at Roll 'em Out Shelves to schedule your free in-home estimate today.
Well, we're halfway through the last show of the first full of January 2024. My name's George. This is my show. We got full lines as we continue to talk about this topic about the Iowa school shooting. I want to reset that, but not until I tell you about Gay Ribble and the Empower Home team of Keller Williams. Let me do that first. I'm reading the Gazette all the time, as you should be too. You should be going to denvergazette.com or gazette.com. These guys are the most reliable source of information out there. They're the ones that house dudes like Dave McGoy, a super investigative reporter who has blown the lid off of all the stuff with the judicial branch. So they just produce great work. Well, one of the articles they have today is Denver realtors feeling a warming trend in the new year home market. That tells you something, folks. You start seeing more and more articles like this. If you've been on the fence about whether now's the time to sell or to try to figure out a way to finance getting into the house you need, or maybe it's the house you want, now's the time. Don't do it by yourself. Don't do it just based off the internet. Let the internet whet your appetite and give you some ideas of what you might be happy with. Then pick up the phone and call Gay Ribble and the Empower Home team at Keller Williams. These are the people that have been doing this thing for decades in the metro area. They're not just, hey, I was tired of being a police officer or a teacher, or it helps supplement my income, I think I'll go be a real. No. These folks, this is their career. Putting families in homes is their career. You get certain advantages with that, like they sell faster than others, for more money than others. They make promises to you others won't, guarantees like we'll sell your house for the price and in the timing that you want. And if we don't, we make it up with the money that you should have had. That's what you get. So give them a call at 833-301-SOLD, 833-301-SOLD, or check them out at sellwithcertaintycolorado.com. That's sellwithcertaintycolorado.com. Now, we've got Dee, Tony, and Aaron on the line, and what they're on the line for, if you're just joining us, is there was a horrific event that took place in rural Iowa, about 25 miles away from Des Moines. Someone told me the S's are silent, so it's not Des Moines. Thank you, Texter, for telling me that. And we've been having a conversation, a needed conversation, every time one of these things happens, about why is this happening and what is our solution for it, short term and long term. Got to have this conversation. And maybe I'm selfish and myopic on this topic because, one, I've spent, my God, close to 3 decades now in the criminal justice game. But also, I got 4 kids. And they've all been through public school. 3 of them are still in public school, and I'm counting my son Trey up at CSU. Their 17-year-old walks into a grade school and murders a 6th grader, wounds 4 others, including the principal, before taking their own life. We better be talking about this, because the other side is. The reason this thing just doesn't get more traction, too, says something about us as society, and says a hell of a lot about the mainstream media. There's rumors out there and stuff on the internet. This kid may have had gender identity issues. Well, the media doesn't want to report on a transgender kid shooting up a school. We had that right here, folks, in Highlands Ranch. 2 shooters, 18-year-old, 16-year-old transgender male, walked into STEM, bookended a room that has no windows and only 2 doors for ingress and egress, and prepared to murder 27 people. Nobody wants to tell the story about the transgender part involved in that. And in no way am I saying being transgender makes you more prone to kill. I'm not saying, but that's one of the reasons the media stays away from it. Maybe there'll be a bullying aspect that'll get their attention. And also no semi-automatic rifle. Well, that doesn't make the story as sexy either, because we're trying to ban semi-automatic rifles. In fact, here in Colorado, you're going to see the legislature, I swear to you, they're going to try, whether the leadership lets it get out or not, they're going to try to ban, like they did last year, all semi-automatic weapons, including handguns. Nothing we do is going to legislate away evil. So the conversation that we're having here in the light of this is, what is the reason this is happening? Why? And what can we do about it? We got it kicked off with Jay from Sterling, but I'm going to go right back to the phone lines here. Texts are starting to fill up too. D from Denver, you're on 710. D, what do you think?
Yeah, George. So, you asked for a solution. I'm about to give you a solution. Okay. So if any congressmen or legislators are out there that can push this type of legislation too, this is a solution that'll work. So, I want you to think about Vegas. I want you to think about Sandy Hook, and I want you to think about James Holmes over in Aurora, close to where I live.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's real simple. If you if you tie the database on to where people, like pharmacies and where you get drugs, right? So where you get prescriptions, if you tie the database, and if you simply say, if you are, if you are prescribed a antipsychotic, if you are depressed, if you are taking Adderall, if you are taking any type of depressant type medicine, you're not allowed to purchase a weapon at that time. Now think about that. That's my solution. It's pretty simple. It's not controversial. Sure, they run background checks. Sure, they do red flag laws. Sure, they do all this other stuff, but it doesn't seem to work. But just think about it. If James Holmes was not able to buy all the weapons that he bought, or that jerk off in Vegas, or the jerk off, at Sandy Hook. I mean, you saw pictures of him. He was obviously prescribed ADD medicine like Adderall, prescription type stuff. If those guys were not allowed to buy weapons at any time, maybe 60 days after, 60 days before, would not have done those shootings. Okay, it's very simple. So that's a simple solution. You asked for a solution.
Let's talk about that,
I'm giving you that solution.
First off, I think there's a lot of common sense to it, and pragmatically, it sounds like it might work. But let's talk about a couple.
Push it through.
Well, let's talk about a couple things. The one, Sandy Hook, I don't think he went out and bought that rifle. I think he
got it from his mother, who was in law enforcement. I know
he
all
did.
About
so
it. Sure.
So that wouldn't have addressed that one. It would have probably had an impact in Aurora, and I don't know what was going on with the dude in Vegas. Okay,
well,
but it doesn't.
Bought all those weapons in and around all the pawn shops around Vegas.
But was he under psychotic meds? I never read that.
Absolutely. 100%. Well, HIPAA compliance, he doesn't allow you to actually do that. And, you can think about that as for a lot of hours if you'd like to. But
that was the other thing I was going to say, is there are some legal impediments. But the other thing is, would that have addressed what just happened in Iowa?
I don't know. Usually when people go through transgender issues, they're seeing a psychologist, and typically they're, how we overprescribe in this, beautiful society that we live in. So think about it. So,
but understand this. A lot of people, it was illegal for him to have the weapons anyway. He didn't procure them through any means that would have invoked some sort of database search or something like that. So, while I do think there's a connection between these things, let me just tell you what the mental health community will say. If you put that out there in the public, because here's the practical impact. If you put that out in the public stream, that if you come in to seek treatment and you take these prescriptions, your Second Amendment rights are going to be limited or infringed upon. They'll stop. Listen, just listen to this. They'll stop coming in. They'll stop coming in to get the prescriptions to take it. So we're going to have more unmedicated people with access to firearms.
It's better than giving these people weapons.
Yeah, but it won't stop that. Do you see what I'm saying? They're going to tell you that will actually encourage more of this, because people will go untreated.
So do you think James Holmes in Aurora, Colorado, if he wasn't able to buy those weapons, you think he would have thought about that before he went to see that psychologist?
100% I do. 100%
he was in med school? No.
100%. Man, let me tell you how smart this guy was.
Listening to a psychologist for many, many years. He was seeing one for probably 5 years.
No,
absolutely.
No, that's not accurate. He wasn't seeing him for 5 years. He'd gone to some family counseling intermittently, a handful of times. Well, he wasn't, because they'd prescribed him.
He was on meds.
Listen, but I know you think you're talking to a dude who has the same access to information you have. I happen to have a little bit more, having tried the case. He was prescribed some antipsychotic medications.
He would not have been able to buy
hang on, but he stopped taking them. He didn't like the way they made him feel, and he found them
30 days before he did the weapons, but he was still in the database for being prescribed medicines for the last. So my deal is this: you ask for a solution.
I'm glad you called in for that, and I want to have that conversation. But it's not like it's a cure-all, fix-all. And I'm giving you the pragmatic response from the mental health community.
60% of them would not be able to. They wouldn't do your analysis. I've written papers over it. I've done studies over it. Workplace shootings. I've read it. I've researched, and I promise you, what I gave you as a solution just now would probably help it out a lot, and it would probably cure 80% of it.
Well, D, I love that we're having the conversation, man, and I really appreciate it. If you've got stuff you want to text in that I can look up, I'd love to read it.
No, I'm not going to text nothing, but I gave you the solution. Do with it what you like. If any congressmen or legislators are out there that can push this type of legislation, please do, because it will help solve the problem. I can promise you that.
Thanks,
Thank
man.
you very much, George.
Appreciate it. Hey, D's line is open at 303-696-1971. Whether I disagree or agree with the solution, we got to have conversations about them. That one, I think, is an attempt to try to bridge that gap between demonstrated, diagnosed, and treated mental illness and access to firearms. I get that. But I'm telling you, the legal impediment will be HIPAA, right? The legal impediment will be any other non-HIPAA privacy law about your medical information, right? Like right now we say if you are diagnosed with certain mental illnesses, you can be precluded from possessing firearms if you're insane and all that other stuff. But I don't know if you can get to the point of prescription. And the thing I posed to him about the mental health professionals, that's legit stuff. The more you stigmatize mental illness or treatment for it, the more you discourage people from seeking it, right? Like if you say, hey, please come to us. We want to help you. We think we've got meds to help you. But by the way, society won't trust you to have firearms if we prescribe this to you. You're going to discourage people that need help, might be benefit from it, from getting there. And this stuff about, hey, James Holmes, you think he would have done something? You think he'd have been able to get the guns? You think? Absolutely. I happen to know a little bit about that dude, and I'm so sorry that we used his name right there. I happen to know a little bit about that dude. Dude was playing evil chess, not checkers. He concocted the quitting school thing. One, so he could have more time to plan for mass murder. But two, he honestly worried that if he just stopped going to see the psychiatrist that he had only started seeing in the middle of his first year. Okay, he wasn't seeing them for 5 years. That's garbage. He didn't want to just stop going because he thought it would draw attention to him. So he thought, I need to concoct an excuse to not go. And my excuse is I'm quitting school. I won't be covered by school insurance anymore, and I can't pay for it. That's why he kept seeing them. He would give them no information. He'd muddle along. They'd prescribe him stuff. He wouldn't take it because it was a game for him. So you're telling me if he thought for a moment, he even writes in his journal, by the way, do not give them too much information. Don't develop false sense of rapport. If they discover the truth, then your idealistic life, which is him to be the fake idealistic life, which is him going to grow up to be a PhD and all this other stuff, that'll go away, but so will the reality that he wants to kill people. That'll be stopped too. So please don't tell me that this is a one-size fix to everybody with mental illness. That dude was smart enough. He would have not gone to see them to begin with. I'm just telling you, that's just how it is. But we need to have these conversations because that right there is a short-term solution, and I do think it would have some positive impact. I just don't know how we get there from here. And it's certainly not going to have prevented, in my opinion, the Aurora Theater thing. It certainly wouldn't have prevented the dude out of Iowa. He didn't obtain the weapons legally either. STEM. I mean, we have this safe, secure law now where we punish people who have guns that are unsecured that get used in those 18 and 16-year-old murderers. They used a crowbar and an axe to break into a safe to get the gun. So that ain't it either. 303-696-1971 is the number. You can call in right now. Tony from Littleton, you're on 710. Tony, what do you think?
Hey, well, I want to talk a little bit about, I'm not sure I agree with your logic on this. Whether it's God or mental illness or what we put in people's heads through social media or videos or movies or any of that. Because, and I think we've talked about this before, the UK has all those things. No God in the schools and all the same movies and all of the same videos and all of that. And they don't have school shootings. And the only difference between us and them are guns. That's it. I mean, that's it. I know you'll say it's not guns. Guns aren't the problem. It's the people behind the guns. But the only difference between the two countries is they don't have guns and they don't have school shootings. And I'm not saying we should be gun free. That's not what I'm saying. But what's
the answer then? What's the answer? If guns are the reason, the absence of guns is the reason the UK is avoiding this thing, then what do we do?
No answer. There's no answer in the immediate future. And I say that because the generations that are in control at this moment are boomers and Gen X. As soon as millennials and Z, the ones that grew up with it and now have children that they're fearing for, they are the largest of the voting bloc. They will make changes to the laws and not to take away all guns. I mean, that's kind of always the point. Anything that happens if we do to try and control the problem, then it becomes, they're coming after all the guns. That's we're in a place where we're not going to do anything. We're not going to try anything. I expect nothing to be done over the next 10 years. But after those next 2 generations get into place, then
what
we'll have
will they
some.
do? What are the laws you can think of that they would support that would have made a difference yesterday in Iowa?
Well, Iowa was actually a good thing for a reason. There were survivors. There were survivors.
Yeah.
That's not
true,
often,
but I mean,
that's not common. That's not common in school shootings. Most of the time, it's done with ARs, and most of the time, everybody who shot is killed. And that is a difference between. We should never have had the whole thing with automatic weapons explode the way it did starting in 2004, and now we've got such a big problem. Your next statement will be a fair statement. Well, you can't do anything about it now because we have too many of them.
But Tony, and I can't tell you the broader statistics, but when you say most of them are ARs, let's just look at what's happened here locally. STEM, no AR, right? No AR assault rifle type of thing. At Columbine, no AR. The closest thing was a Tech DC-9 handgun was the closest thing to that. At Arapahoe High School on December 13, 2013, it was a shotgun. I mean, when you look around, Mountain Vista, the 2 girls where we avoided that mass shooting, they were trying to get their hands on a handgun. Yeah, ARs show up prominently because they're amplified by the media in other parts of the country, but here locally, don't see it. Maybe you could point to King Soopers. That's not a school shooting, but King Soopers was definitely something like that.
And the theater shooting, right? Am I wrong?
Theater shooting for sure. You're absolutely right.
Absolutely.
But
okay.
you said school
no,
shootings.
Statistically.
You said
statistically.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, and I'm not. We won't go through the thing. We can check those statistics out, but the vast majority are done with ARs, and the only point. Well. Let's just say it's true, because then it would be, well, what would the okay. Well, I'm going to say let's say it's true, because I believe that's
true.
Statistic.
Then here's the answer. Go ahead. If that's true,
okay.
then
if that's true, then at some point something's going to happen that is so horrible, and let's say I always thought Sandy Hook was the one, but now, it was maybe not enough kids and they weren't young enough. Maybe somebody's got to hit a daycare with 2-year-olds, or maybe, and this is kind of the horrifying thing, given where our culture is. What if 3 or 4 or 5 kids enter a Costco, all armed with ARs, and fan out? You're going to have a shooting of 1,000 people and 300 dead. And one of those types of incidents are going to be what causes those generations, Millennial and Z, to say, okay, enough is enough. We're going to change the laws. And
in what way?
And maybe they'll absolutely do a buyback on ARs.
And then what
ban
happens?
ARs.
Then what happens?
People hide them. Then they become black market. But you know what? The American way, we try to do something. We try to do something to minimize the death without you losing your Second Amendment rights. You don't lose your Second Amendment. No, you still have a right. You still have a right to a gun and to self-defense. But maybe the society says we're not going to have semi-automatics. Look, you can't yell.
Oh my
First, you have First Amendment restrictions. You can't yell fire in a theater, right? I mean, that's kind of the point, George. You accept nothing that in any way restricts your Second Amendment rights.
Well, that's not
look
true.
at it as
that's not true.
Well, largely. Any argument made that you and I in the past have talked a little bit about this, that restricts your desire, your Second Amendment rights, is, you say, why is it based on need? Why do I need to have the gun? I don't need to have the gun. I have a right to have the gun.
What other right in the top 10 there, the Bill of Rights, is premised on need? You have to justify your right based on need. Which one, other than the second?
Let's just use the First Amendment and say that's a great example. That's you have a right to free speech up to the point that you cause harm to other people by yelling fire in a theater. And you can't do that.
No, but
you
hang
can't
on.
do that.
You
There's a
can say
restriction.
a whole bunch of things that cause harm to other people by way of criticism and all that other stuff. You can say a whole bunch of negative, hateful things about them. We don't keep the media from reporting even things that are false. We just provide a back-end solution for it. That's not a great example. And I don't support things like crew-served weapons. I don't think people ought to be able to possess any single thing that can go boom. I'm down with limitations, but there's a limit to the limitations that I would support. But the problem here is when you talk about it in terms of need, you can justify at some point getting to, I think you should be able to have a 2-shot Derringer, but nothing more than that. You don't need that. If you can't kill whatever it is with 2 shots, that'll give you at least enough time for the police to show. I mean, you can talk yourself into that. That's not what the Second Amendment's about.
That hence the argument that we have to have a right to have that semi-automatic weapon and rifles and handguns and so every a gun that the gun industry would not even show at their own trade shows through the 90s, up and into the 90s. They wouldn't even show them because they considered those weapons a weapon of war. Granted, it's not an AK, it's not a fully automatic, but even the industry knew not to show those. And then when the NRA wanted to push those weapons, it got in the way of the street. That's when the explosion of these guns, and 2004 forward, you can pull those stats up. It's like the #1 selling gun today for the last 10 years has been ARs. There's so many of them out there now. Reeling them in is probably impossible. Impossible.
It's definitely impossible. But
that was all a marketing ploy. And now here
Tony,
we are.
as you know, you can't market your way alone to success. There has to be a demand for it. But Tony, let me do this. I'm up against a break here. I got to get away. But
thanks for the time.
Of course, every time. Even when we don't agree, and we don't, it doesn't mean we can't have the conversation here because we don't get to do that anymore. By the way, Tony's line is open at 303-696-1971. Fill that thing before we cut away to a break. You just can't do that anymore. On social media, if you were to post what Tony posts, he just gets blown up. You're a traitor, you're treasonous, you're a gun grabber, you're anti-American. Hopefully you'll have a home invasion burglar with a gun and they'll shoot you and you won't be. I mean, they're just horribly toxic, acerbic stuff. We don't do that here. I'm going to disagree with you. I might even be passionate about it, but let's have the damn conversation, okay? The solution that Tony's talking about ain't a solution to Iowa. It is not going to be a solution to Columbine. It wouldn't have been a solution to Arapahoe. It wouldn't have been a solution to STEM. It's a potential solution to some. I just don't think it's going to be effective. And frankly, I just think it's a violation of the Second Amendment. And we can go 8 million different ways with this conversation, but to discuss how are we going to address this short-term and long-term, that's important. That's what talk radio's for. You just can't do this anywhere else like this. You tell me your opinion, I'm not going to blow you up like some anonymous troll would on X or Twitter. That's just not how it works. Let's have the conversation, and in more than 140 characters, 303-696-1971. Can I tell you about our good friend Mitch Flory at the Art of Granite? Mitch Flory is that guy that you call when you're looking to upgrade the eye-catching parts of your house. And what I mean by that are the countertops. It's your kitchen. It's where people gather around to make food, break bread, talk about the events of the day. It's the thing that you can change that overnight changes the feel and appearance and value of your home. Bathroom, kitchen, laundry room, that basement that you're trying to finish, bedroom, it doesn't matter. Wherever you have the countertops, Mitch Flory is the only place you need to go for this. You can check out his website for sure, theartofgranite.com, theartofgranite.com. But it's kind of misleading because he does it with granite. He does it with marble, does it with quartz. That's the man-made stuff. It can do almost anything. He can bend these products to his will. He's a craftsman and an entrepreneur. Guys, all about customer service. Here's how you know it. Everybody that goes to Mitch gets wholesale prices. But if you tell him you're a George listener, a 710 listener, he gives you something special. He gives you a free bathroom countertop with the kitchen countertop package. Or if you're only doing one room and that's cool, that's what the budget supports, he'll throw in the sink for free. Guys, all about value and quality. Check him out at the website I gave you, theartofgranite.com, but pick up the phone and call, and you'll be surprised. The guy that answers on the other end, it be Mitch Floria. 303-386-5919. 303-386-5919. Listen, we're going to cut away for a break. When we come back, we're going to get to the calls. Lines are full on this important topic. We've got Aaron and Kathy and Jill, and we're going to have you two as well. Some of the texts that have come here. George, evil people do evil things. The communist left and rhinos have rejected God. Today's decay began when the Democrats removed God from schools and government and took over media. And then there's more. Our founders warned us. Read Naked Communist. The book lists 45 goals of communism. An FBI agent exposed the Russian plan to overthrow America in this 1958 book. Another one. It's because the kids grow up killing on the games like Grand Theft Auto since they were 6 and get desensitized to killing like it's no big deal. Well, I think that, the response that we would have had from Tony was they have those same games in England and they're not doing that. So is that the answer? I think it's part of the conversation, but is that the answer? Another one as well. That dude is saying his BS. This is from Eric. There's a black market in all of America for gun purchases. If you have the money, he's full of it. Now listen, it doesn't have to be all caps and exclamation points and that the guy's full of it. Guy has an opinion. There are some logical conclusions that can be drawn from this opinion. It's not like it's crazy town. I just think it's ineffective. And I also think that it's a violation of the Second Amendment. But don't we deserve to have the conversation? Here's another. Tony always acts like he knows what he's talking about, but he's very uninformed. What if? Maybe. But instead of attacking Tony, let's attack the argument. And that's what we're trying to do here. I'm going to do some research. Maybe you can too. Alexa's probably out there. If she's not busy, she'll figure this out. But I don't know if AR-15s are the vast majority of the weapons used in these mass shootings. They're just the ones that certainly get the most publicized. But I can just tell you locally, as the guy that has been at these things and prosecuted the surviving gunmen, they're not there all the time. They are not there all the time. 303-696-1971. Kathy may have had to drop, but Kathy, we would have taken you first when you come back. Give us a call when you come back. It's George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS. Phone lines full. Here's some more of the text that we're dealing with right here. The use of the term assault weapon is deliberately vague. Denver amended its municipal ordinance to change the definition of assault weapon. Now, any semi-automatic pistol with an extended magazine meets the definition. Thank you for the level-headed conversation, George. The mass shooting problem is a moral society problem. We no longer have a higher power. Have a higher power to answer to if you commit something like this. Without a higher power, what consequences does one face when they commit suicide after shooting people? That's true too, right there. And there are going to be the folks on the radical left who see the Second Amendment as an abomination and something that if they could, they would erase it tomorrow. But in the meantime, they'll try to interpret it away as they had done successfully with some of the courts out there. But that's not the issue here. They don't want to take any responsibility for what they have done to the value of life in this society. And I defy anybody on the left to call into this show and explain to me how the policies of the last 50 years have encouraged the sanctity of human life for this generation, the next, the one after that, or the one after that. Call me and tell me which of your policies has been about the sanctity of human life. 303-696-1971. Here's another one. You cannot use gun restrictions to solve societal decay. True. The rate of mass shootings is absolutely related to social issues. I agree. Devaluation of life, tolerance of criminals and criminal behavior. You're singing to the choir, preaching to the choir here. This guy is showing misunderstanding of the First Amendment. It's tough to analogize those two and be able to justify what's being suggested with the Second Amendment. It's funny. There is no other amendment where someone says, do you need to have privacy in your home? Can you justify why the police can't ask you questions while you're in custody without reading you your rights? Is there a reason that you shouldn't be locked up and tortured as a product of a sentence for your crime? I mean, nobody talks in those terms. But with the Second Amendment, and only the Second Amendment, the question is, do you really need to have that gun? It's just silliness. Let's get right back to the phone lines. Aaron, you've been patient. Aaron from Denver, you're on 710. What do you think?
Well, guns have always been used. Guns have always been used as a scapegoat. And the thing is, George, you can scream a fire in the movies here. I can scream it too. But the thing is, though, 99.9% of us don't do it because we don't want to deal with the consequences. We know the consequences would be harsh. So that's why we don't scream a fire in the movie theater, because I don't want to deal with the consequences. I like my freedom. I don't commit murder because I like being free. I don't want to be in a jail cell. And the reason why you got a dumb donkey of a current governor that took that option away, the death penalty away from DA, that's an option. Now, does a death penalty prevent me from committing murder? No.
Nope.
If I want to commit murder, I'm gonna commit murder. No life in prison, no death penalty is gonna do it. But the thing is, when I commit a murder, I'm gonna try to make sure that I don't get caught. When a person commits murder, they're not gonna stay there. Oh, hey, Mr. Police Officer, yeah, I did the murder. Come and arrest me. No, when I commit the murder, I'm trying to get the hell out of Dodge. And that's what most murderers do. They don't want to get caught because they don't want to deal with the consequences. This 17-year-old kid kills these kids in this school in Iowa, blows his brains out. He knew it was wrong. That's why he blew his brains out, because he didn't want to deal with the consequences.
That's
the
a good point.
consequences, either you would have got the death penalty in Iowa, or you would have got life imprisonment, and you would rot and die in prison till you 80, 90 years old. However you're going to live.
Aaron, there's a lot to that I agree with. It 17 years old, Supreme Court has said can't put them folks to death under the age of 18 under the 8th Amendment. And nobody ever asked the question, by the way, do you need to live if you're 17 and you commit it? I mean, again, the disparity between with the way we treat the second and the others. But your point about the consequences is real. The fascinating change in mass shootings, and this guy's a throwback, right? Most of these mass shooters live by their own hand. They design their own survival. Think about the Marjorie Stone Douglas, I probably got that screwed up, but that mass shooting down there in Florida, that guy by design tried to live. Aurora Theater, by design, tried to live. This guy's a little bit of a throwback in taking his own life, but the reason they do it is, you're right, man. They don't want to face the music.
They don't want to face the consequence. That's why I don't commit murder. That's why I don't commit rape. That's why I'm not out here raping and pillaging and plundering.
Aaron, I'll bet you this too, though. Yeah. I'll bet you that even if the consequences, at least the worldly consequences, were diminished or less, you wouldn't commit murder because you just know it's morally wrong.
Sure, of course I know it's morally wrong. Of course, I mean, I have morals, I have ethics, I have values. I do value life. So of course, but if I went to the dark side and decide, I'm a miserable piece of crap, I'm a loser. My life sucks. My family sucks. Everything sucks in life. Well, I'm a kill as many people as I can, and then I'm gonna blow my brains out because I don't want to deal with the consequences. And that's what these people, it is domestic terrorism in America. They're domestic terrorists. It's no different than me wearing a bomb vest and walking into a school and blowing myself up and killing me because I'm a miserable sack of crap on earth.
What's the fix, man?
Personally, I'll just be frank. There's no solution. In trying to ban guns, believe me, it's like trying to ban drugs. The so-called war on drugs. Mm-hmm. Well, if somebody wants some cocaine or crack or meth, they're going to find a way to get it. Whether they find it legally, illegally, they're going to find a way to get it. Whether you can ban all guns on planet Earth, but if I'm an evil sack of crap, I'm a miserable. My life, I'm a loser. Life sucks. I want to kill everybody. I wake up one day and I had a bad day. I'm gonna try to kill as many people. You're not going to stop me because I'm going to find a way to
We can't stop people who have that in their heart and their head, but how do we keep them from having it in their heart and their head? What's that longer term thing that you've touched upon with the values, the morality, the consequence? What's the fix there?
Well, the fix is obviously the fix is the root cause of it. Obviously, is morals, values, ethics. How you're raised. Because when we come to this planet, we have to come here. Other people made that decision for me to be here on this planet. So hopefully, whether you're raised by a single parent or two parents, that they instill some morals, ethics, value, a work ethic. What is your purpose? Instill a purpose while you're here, because either you're gonna have a purpose of good, or you're gonna have a purpose of evil. And that's a choice. So either you're gonna go to the light, or you're gonna go to the dark. And obviously, this young man, he chose the path of darkness, and as a result, kill as many as I can and blow my brains out because I don't want to deal with the consequence. I don't want to spend a life in prison. I don't want to deal with the death penalty. I don't want to go through all those hoops of the court system. So I'm gonna blow my brains out, and that's what he did.
Aaron, thanks for the call, my man. Have a great new year here, and thanks for keeping the conversation going. 303-696-1971. Aaron's line is open. Artis, you're on 710. What do you think, Artis?
Hi, George.
Hi.
Well, I'm a retired nurse, and I worked in newborn intensive care most of my career. So life, even the nurses I worked with were pro-choice, which just absolutely amazed me since we were essentially taking care of abortions. But I just wonder, did this young man have both parents? I realized he was on medication, which he obviously didn't take. I question the fact of, we have all this transgender baloney floating around the universe now that you can be a man or a woman, just make your choice at whatever age you are, which is asinine. But, we're adding more confusion to already confused teenagers. And I just wonder, have they interviewed his mom? Did she not notice something changed? Where did he get the money at age 17 to buy a weapon, legal or illegally? There's just lots of questions. I feel bad, but this is happening so much more. When I graduated from high school in 70, I had absolutely no fear in a suburb of Cleveland, Ohio, that somebody was going to come in and shoot up the cafeteria.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, Artis, you've asked a very important question here that we also need to pursue. And that is, how do we forensically kind of examine the steps that caused this guy to get to where he is? I think the scary answer for this, and we've heard this from some folks already today, is there's no way to identify it. There's no way to prevent it. And that makes it super scary, because then it just seems like it's random. Like it's just so unpredictable and unstoppable that if it's your time, it's your time. But you're asking important questions that I don't think academia wants to ask. Now, the BAU out at the FBI, the Behavioral Analysis Unit, those folks take those deep dives on these cases. But what I think we ought to do, not just on mass shootings like this, is do what you've suggested, Artis, and that is, after the fact, when the dust has settled, when all the appeal stuff gets resolved, let's do an analysis of those in prison who've engaged in this kind of violent behavior. Let's talk about the ones who are gone and interview their families and try to figure out what are the common threads. Is it intact families? I don't know. I mean, I can guess. But I'd like to know, right? Like I'd like to know what the answer is. Aurora theater shooter, he had an intact family his whole life, really decent upbringing. So that wasn't it. But on these other ones, you look at STEM. No, that wasn't accurate. You look at Arapahoe High School. No, that wasn't accurate. So is there a thread there? But you're asking the right questions too. We don't know enough to even come up with some of the solutions that may make a difference. But I think left-leaning media and those in power don't want to hear the answer that that family deterioration is leading to this environment as well.
Well, and do we need to put some kind of, I know we don't have enough policemen, but somebody that could have seen that kid walk. I mean, I don't think you can hide an automatic weapon very well. I don't know. I don't know anything about guns. I don't want to know about guns. But, if they had some somebody with a gun on the good side of things, could they have prevented this if they were in the, if the cafeteria is full?
Another great
where
question.
That guy is.
Artis, another great question, and that is a good short-term solution thing that we have to answer. You've touched on both. What do we do long-term? What do we do short-term? I like that we have these conversations. Artis, thanks for advancing the topic.
Not a problem, my dear. You have a good day.
You too. Happy New Year. Artis's line is open at 303-696-1971. We're going to cut away for a break and try to get in our other callers, Frank and Rich, and anyone else that calls in on Artis line. I got to quickly tell you about Daniel J. Kaplis, super attorney, maybe the best in the business, not just in this state, but in the region. And the business that he's in is providing justice to victims of negligence, recklessness, sometimes intentional conduct, and the evildoers there. And sometimes it's not evil. Sometimes it's just, they just don't care. And that's the recklessness and negligence. It could be an individual. It could be a corporation, some other kind of a business. It could be the insurance company. There are a lot of forces at work in the civil sector that try to keep people from being made whole when someone else harms them. Dan is there. He's kind of like the Equalizer. In fact, I just watched Equalizer 3, Netflix. It was free with Denzel Washington. Love that character. Love the storyline. He's out there. Dan is like the civil law equalizer. You've got all these forces against you. You don't have to go in there underarmed and underexperienced. Go in there with the big guns. He and Babar Wahid out there at the Dan Kaplis law firm do this day in and day out. If you're looking for justice, if you're looking for a way to try to figure out how to move forward when someone has taken that something away from you that was quality of life, Dan Kaplis is the first and only stop you make. You call him at 303-770-5551. 303-770-5551. You can check them out at dankaplislaw.com. Dan Kaplis, Kaplis law.com. When we come back, Frank, Rich, everybody else, we'll try to get through the text as well. It's George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler right back with you here, 710 KNUS. Frank, you've been patient. Frank from Denver, you're on 710. You got my time, my man.
Hey, George, are you, as a lawyer and prosecutor, aware of any post hoc analysis on any group of these shooters that has come up with any list of, quote, reasons that these people give?
No, I'm not. That's a great question. I'm not. I got to believe there's stuff out there that the FBI has through this behavioral analysis unit that maybe it's not publicly available, but I know they look at these things and they're trying to figure this out. They had me out to Quantico and sat me down and grilled me on STEM and the Aurora Theater thing for that very end. That's a great question. I don't know. That's a really good question.
You as a lawyer also, don't they have a book in law school called Motivation? Isn't there a book about criminal minds that talks about motivation?
It's not going to be a law school book, but I am certain that there are criminologic analysis and other criminal law studies that talk about that exact thing. I'm sure of that.
Well, when I think of this in a different frame of mind, going back, let's say in the Bible, to the earliest murder, it happened with Adam and Eve's children, Cain
and Abel,
his brother. And so you look at the motivation there, and it was either envy or jealousy. His brother had some thing or trait that he didn't have, and he felt inferior. So I kind of think in the realm of human psychology, it's a sort of a lack mentality. And it's also an emotional mentality problem and a control problem, that they can't control their emotions. And those people can be identified and helped to some degree. Now, either societal counseling, loving, pharmacologists, have come up with things to block the frontal lobe, pills that numb people up, Haldol.
Well, Frank, and forgive me, man, you can hear this. And somehow you and I have figured out a way to hook up at the end of every hour, buddy. But thank you for advancing the show and the talk about the mental health stuff. Look, Rich and everyone else calling in at 303-696-1970. We're going to keep this thing going. Stick around. George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. Well, welcome to the last hour of the George Show right here on Friday, last day of the first full week of January 2024. We get replaced by Charlie Kirk for a couple hours, and then we get a little DP from noon to 2. And then from 2 to 4, we get Seb Gorka. And then 4 to 7, Brandon Tatum. He's going to be on the radio here. And then we'll join you live and local again next Monday, 6 to 10 a.m. Over the weekend, of course, you know, you've got Jimmy and Randy and Dr. Dunn. You got a guy named Pete Boyles. I mean, you just have a whole bunch of options for local over the weekend as well. Now, listen, the topic that we've been talking about, and I got to tell you, man, I looked at a little social media here, just kind of seeing what's going on as we're having this show. You know that we have an impact here in the metro area as a talk radio show when your detractors are commenting on the substance of your show on social media. When the people that don't like you and don't even like this radio station are listening in and commenting on it, you know you're having an impact. And when we talk about this topic here today, that's why we do it. We want to have this conversation, and we need to figure out what works, what doesn't work, what can be put in place, what can't be put in place. And if you're just tuning in, what we're talking about here is, you know, yesterday, you know, we could talk about the national stuff all the time, right? Like there was a town hall with Nikki and Ron, and it's not that that isn't important, but the thing that occupied my mind last night and throughout the day was this mass shooting at this school in rural Iowa, about 25 miles away from Des Moines, when a 17-year-old walked into I think it was a grade school in the community, armed with a shotgun and a handgun, and murdered a 12-year-old or 11-year-old, murdered a sixth grader, shot 3 other students, and shot a couple times at least the principal, and then took his own life. And this hits close to home for anybody who's said goodbye to their kids at the beginning of the school day with the belief, the faith that they're going to pick them up at the end. And so I want to continue to have a conversation when these pop up about what now? What's the solution now? I can tell you this, all the solutions that we have tried thus far in the state of Colorado since Sandy Hook and Aurora would not have prevented this thing from happening in Colorado. In fact, none of those solutions would have prevented any of the mass shootings that I've handled here in Colorado. So we can focus on, well, it's the guns, it's the guns, it's the guns. It's a conversation we have to have. We have to have that. But we also have to acknowledge that that's not the core issue here. There are short-term and long-term solutions to this. And I've had people text and say, hey, we need to harden the target. Okay, I get it. I agree. We need to have SROs. I'm a big proponent and big believer in SROs. And if you come from a part of the community where you're like, well, having cops in the school is it's the pipeline to prison. One, provably false and garbage, but that's a perception you have to deal with. Two, the absence of SROs is the pipeline to the ground. It's the pipeline to the grave. That's what we've seen. Remember the kid that's frisking down there at up in Denver who pulls out a gun and shoots the people trying to frisk him, the school administrators? Come on, man. So then we talk about mental health. That's a real issue, man. There's no easy fix to this, but I want to have these conversations. For me, the long-term solution for this is we've got to acknowledge what we've done as a society to the concept of life and the value we give it. This Colorado, who has, I think, ballpark most liberal abortion law in America, maybe the world. Maybe the world. That can't help, right? Like when you tell people that if you change your mind at the last moment, that you can go ahead and end a life that minutes later would have been born and receive some version of rights, when you tell them that, when you say that the value of a human life is really dependent upon what some other person thinks about it, it sends a message. When you're one of these right-wing kooks who goes out on social media and says we need to see people swinging from the gallows, or, Joe Biden is guilty of treason and he needs to be put to, when you start talking like that, that sends a message. So for me, we're broken as a society, not unfixable, but we're broken. But we have to have a serious conversation about the conversations. We have to have a serious conversation about conversations. What a boob. We have to have serious conversations about the real issues that have over a period of decades degraded the value we place on life. I mean, it's just easier to commit violence against another person who offends you in traffic or in line waiting for something because they don't matter. They're irrelevant. They're not the product of some sort of divine spark. They're just some other amalgamation of cells that has offended you or disrespected you. Why wouldn't you visit violence upon them? You combine that with the fast food mentality that Americans have on every damn issue. I mean, Ozempic is an example of that. If we can't scratch that itch immediately, we go crazy. And by God, we demand to scratch that itch. And if you tell me we can't, you will trigger me. But it's just things that are bigger, longer term, harder to change, but more important to change than just addressing guns. But we don't want to do it. What solutions can we talk about that might make a difference? 303-696-1971. I want to get to our calls. Rich, you've been super patient, man. Rich from Lakewood, you're on 710. What do you think?
Hey, George, how you doing?
Good, man.
Okay, so my thought, just some thoughts on at the high school level. These things happen at a lot of different places and so forth. But to me, you should focus on the problem, that really has to be addressed, which is, you've got a classroom full of students and somebody walks in with a gun. I mean, independent of what, moral issues or psychological or family problems or whatever, ultimately it all ends up at that point. And, the only case that I'm aware of where the number of victims was minimized was when the students fought back. And of course it was a tragic situation, obviously, but I think it avoided a lot of additional occurred in that case.
You're talking about STEM.
Right. I think it was STEM where, yeah.
It was STEM. It was Kendrick Castillo and a bunch of other good folks, Brendan Biley and
exactly
Josh and all these other guys. Yeah.
And my other thought is, by graduation day, most of the seniors are actually adults. So you've really got a large number of adults in that school. And I think, if you looked at non-lethal defense type techniques, that could be, let's say, taught in gym class, maybe have a requirement that, the kids be aware that, if you're going to hide under your desk and wait to get shot, as opposed to fighting back with, whatever. I know there are actually some new weapons out there. I mean, they're like guns, but they actually don't kill you. They shoot rubber balls or things like that, that disable someone. And, some kind of training that's done at the school level like that probably would make the kids maybe even feel a little bit safer because, hey, we know how to react. And, I don't know, just some thoughts along
I think
those lines.
that's a great short-term solution for when we realize, hey, we can't stop this from happening. How do we make the targets more resilient or capable of resistance? I think there's something to that, Rich, but there's got to be a longer term solution to it. And I don't think you can focus on one to the exclusion of the other. But one of the things that you mentioned when you highlighted STEM, I hadn't thought about this. Isn't it interesting that one of the heroes in that classroom, and there were 5, probably more than that, but 5 for sure heroes, that the guy that started it off, the guy that traded his life for everyone else's, was a devout Catholic. Now, I'm not saying that's the reason it happened, but I'm saying there's something to the idea that this guy was brought up in a home that had a different value on human life. This is also a kid, by the way, and this is the untold story of STEM too. Every single person that took heroic action that day against the 2 gunmen had familiarity with guns. Hell, the teacher was a concealed carry holder, and she's out there choking out the 16-year-old transgender with the handgun trying to shoot everybody. All of these people, Brendan Biley, Kendrick Castillo, Josh Jackson, they all had some familiarity with it too. So maybe as part of your training, you're talking about that kind of thing too. Let's demystify and de-scarify these firearms so that when evil shows up with them, these guys can act.
Yeah, sure. And I'm not suggesting that seniors carry actual firearms.
Oh, no,
in
I'm
school,
not.
But
no,
I'm saying, at that age, they're adults and they should be able to carry some of these non-lethal issues. And, you could even scatter them throughout the various classes in a high school. You may have a couple seniors sit in on each class, part of their, senior training or whatever you want to call it, education. So you'd have some people at least that hopefully would be well trained. Actually, through gym class. I think gym class is still required in school, and of course the athletes would be ideal candidates for people that would be like a cadre of 50 or 100 students that would be mostly would be adults and trained to fight back in these situations. Because like I said, I think I'm the only situation where I know that it worked, in terms of high school. Now I don't know, of course, grade school and so forth.
No,
you look at different issues there, but a lot of these shootings occur at the high school level, so that might be a thought. So I don't know. Maybe the law you would pass would be a law requiring all kids starting at the junior age or whatever in gym class to be trained in these techniques or something. I mean, it's we used to climb ropes and do all other kinds of stuff.
You're right. It was a different level of vigorous kinetic kind of PE.
Yeah,
when you and I were kids.
Well, we did Indian wrestling and all this kind of good stuff. So you could train kids in some of this kind of stuff. I think.
Yeah,
I think it'd be interesting to do. So,
Rich, thanks for the ideas. Yeah, thank you, and thanks for advancing the conversation, my man. Happy New Year. Rich's line is open at 303-696-1971. About to grab up Marty and Jacqueline. I got to tell you though about our good friends at Ultra Botanica who have put out this Ultra Cur product. It is the all-natural curcumin based. And by the way, don't just go to the getultranow.com website to research this. You can do that. Do some independent research on your own. I did. This curcumin stuff, pretty crazy, the positive impacts it has on your health. Well, these guys have taken it to the next level. It's like putting curcumin on steroids with this patented all-natural thing. It's antioxidant, it's anti-inflammatory, it has positive health benefits. Folks that have taken this, about half of them experience relief within 48 hours, half of that group within 2. But here's the deal. You don't have to commit to buying it untested. Nope. Perfectly safe, perfectly healthy. Go to your natural grocers, go find the vitamin manager and say, I'd like to have my 3-day free supply. Only that way, by going to the vitamin manager, can you get that. And then say, hey, could I get one for a loved one or someone else I care about? They'll give you one more. And then you go try it. And then you go, dang, I do feel better with this. Billy and I have taken it. I've experienced the relief. You should too. Check them out at getultranow.com. But go to the natural grocers and get to that vitamin manager. Listen, let's get right back to the phone lines here. We've got Marty. You're on 710 KNUS. Marty, what do you think?
Hey, George, thank you so much.
Sure.
Good to be with you. Great topic. There's so many places to go here. You need a 10-hour show to really get into this.
Well, you're right.
Stuff.
You're right. There are too many issues to resolve here, but at least let's start this conversation.
Yes, no, you're 100% right. And I have the perfect place for us to go to.
Okay.
We can cut out all the different ideas, and you're right. You see, George, this is what sometimes gets me sideways on you, because you were coming out of that break, you sounded very much like that's the kind of conservative voice we need. But when it came to holding Joe accountable, you don't want to go all the way yet. But let's set that one aside and go right to mental
all
health.
the way is advocating for him to be put to death, you're not going to get me there, man. You just that's my point.
But and you would say the same thing about Trump, right? You would rebuke anybody trying to put Trump to death.
Sweet God, of course, yes.
Okay, but that's the hostility on the left says, let's hang him, let's get this over with. But let's go right to the tragedy, because, and I think I've posed this to you before, and if I've not, I apologize, because it must be put out there. If you are going to get rid of one of two things in society and say what will have the best impact for all, you got to pick two things on the table: fentanyl and mail-in voting. You can get rid of one of them forever in America.
Say that again. Which two? Mail-in voting and what was the other one?
Fentanyl. You can eradicate it from America today, or you can eradicate mail-in voting for today. What has the greatest societal benefit for the average nobody? And the answer is very clearly mail-in voting, because it goes right into why we have the LGBTQ community has become the most violent, aggressive, irrational, profound group in America. Tiny group, but protected by a group that is looking to destroy
Hang on,
America.
Marty, let's separate our disagreement with their philosophy. And so let's take the irrational part and put it on the shelf for a moment. Talk to me about what evidence there is that they are the most violent group out there. I just don't see evidence of it.
Okay, well, if you want to talk mental illness and you're choosing to, I guess, remove the LGBTQ mentality from mental illness, we have a problem. Those two are linked at the hip. You can't make the distinguishing that a 50-year-old man can wake up one day and say, I think I'm a woman. That is, okay, you call it whatever you want. I like call it rational, or at least not sound science, because we know that no man has ever birthed a
Marty,
woman.
to your point, for the moment, Marty, gender dysphoria is a legit thing. The DSM-5 categorizes it. But what do you say to just, you said LGBTQ, lesbians, gays, bisexuals, are they mentally ill? Violent?
Well, I would call it that, but for that for the conversation that you and I are having, let's not call them mentally ill, because I think it is triggering you a little bit. But
not triggering me. I just think it's unprovable.
Okay, how about this? Set aside that. I'm going to call it deviant behavior. Deviant behavior. But let's do this. So check it out. So there's one party in America that has been, and you have to admit, George. Okay, over the past 3 years, LGBTQ, gender dysphoria, that has become a greater theme in America or a lesser theme? I think the answer is obvious. It's a greater theme, right? And you have to understand the party that was in power that has made this now catapult. So when you say, where's the evidence? Where's the prognosis of mentally ill or irrational or dangerous? Well, let's go back to Tennessee and all the efforts that they've made to hide the manifesto. And what does that manifesto say from Audrey Hale, yet another trans person? Well, it talks about the killing of Christian children, white children, the hate for white people. And that was protected by our own FBI, our own law enforcement agencies to cover
and Marty,
the mental illness. And here we are
what
again.
You're saying about that individual. Don't know the work, don't know the person. If that's what they're saying, of course it's evil and it's wrong. But that is not emblematic of this entire community. I mean, do you have friends that are gay, that are part of the LGBTQ community? Do you have friends that fit that definition?
Gosh, it's okay. Yes, it's hard. They're not say friends, meaning because unless I can call that person to the light, to the truth, you're really not supposed to be in bed hanging out with them, because guess what, George? They're going to call you to their darkness if you can't bring them out of that. So I think homosexual is deviant behavior. I think it's deviant behavior.
I appreciate what you're saying about that, but let's be honest. You're not called to insulate yourself with like-minded thinkers and Christians. You're called upon to, where you can, make a difference in someone else's life. And if you think what they're doing is wrong, keeping you from interacting with them, that's not Christian either. But my point is this: I have friends who fit the LGBTQ thing. I've represented clients who fit that bill. They're not out there trying to kill children. They're not out there engaging in the evil stuff. And I think we get distracted, one, if we don't acknowledge whatever's going on with these shooters on an individual basis. But two, I think we're getting distracted from a real cure if we try to drill down on that as what's causing all this. Because I'll tell you what, the Aurora Theater shooter, he was an LGBTQ. The 18-year-old leader of the STEM shooter, he was an LGBTQ. Mountain Vista, Arapahoe, Columbine High School, ain't none of those shooters LGBTQ. In fact, the one thing they have in common other than Mountain Vista, they're all white dudes. That's the common denominator.
Totally fair. Totally fair. And I'll just say it like this, and I think it's good because we're talking about the uncomfortable stuff, and that's the most important thing is however we get it out there, it gets out there. The societal rot, though, that you're talking about, George, you know what that is? That's when leaders of society have given up on their people and have turned them over to self-destruction. And I would just put this out for you and your listeners, and I'll let the line go and appreciate the time, is, if your kid was a 16-year-old heroin addict, living at home, behaving as a drug addict, I think 99 out of 100 parents would be doing everything they could in their power. They would see it, address it, want to deal with it. But when it comes to this LGBTQ mental illness side of things that we're hiding it in the closet. We're stuffing it in the closet, but it's just as dangerous as self-destruction, LGBTQ and transgender. That is self-destructive behavior, just like the heroin addict. And we have to treat them the same, or we just go on and on, George. So appreciate the time. God bless everybody. Have a good day.
Thanks, Marty. I appreciate it. Listen, provocative phone call. I just don't agree with any of the LGBTQ stuff. I just think if we focus on that and try to suggest that and that was the part I asked about, the more violent, the more prone, that's not it. If that's a vehicle to them committing the crime because maybe it was the product of some argument of bullying or some medications or treatment or mental, we have to have that conversation. But let me tell you, there was a 16-year-old transgender killer at STEM, and their transgenderism had not a single thing to do with the shooting, and there was no bullying. There was no evidence of bullying at all. That 16-year-old was manipulated by their best friend, the 18-year-old who was the cheerleader, the organizer for this whole thing. So listen, I want to have the conversation, but that ain't it, man. It ain't the LGBTQ thing. Honestly, if you look statistically, what you're going to find is white dudes. White dudes are mass shooters. White dudes go into schools and kill children. Something about it. Don't know what it is, but it's something we got to explore. Does it mean they're 100%? Nope. But I'd be willing to bet for whatever numbers are out there, white dudes lead the way. 303-696-1971 is the number. Jacqueline, of course, we're going to get to you. Our good friend from Nebraska. Joe from Aurora, of course, we'll get to you too, and any other calls at 303-696-1971. Want to tell you about Rocky Mountain Men's Clinic. These are the good folks that are willing to change your life. We talked about with Marty about the hard to talk about uncomfortable topics. Listen, if you're a guy of a certain age and your body is starting to make those changes, my God, women deal with the whole thing with menopause and they're changing. You can't stop it. It's going to happen at some point. It's part of life. Same thing with the testosterone stuff. If you're interested in addressing that, not ignoring it, not pretending you're going to nutrition your way out of it. If you're interested in really dealing with it, getting back some of that energy, that spring in your step, the better sleep. I mean, the sleep thing has been haunting me for 14 years now. then you want to call up the Rocky Mountain Men's Clinic at 720-440-7900. 720-440-7900. $99 is the first visit, but here's the deal. They're going to give you the T test, the PSA test. If you sign up with them, that $99 just gets folded into the cost of the rest of the treatment, so in essence becomes free. If you want to know if you're a good candidate for it, go to their website, RockyMountainMen'sClinic.com. Take the 10-question, 2-minute quiz, and then move forward with making your life even better. When we come back, Jacqueline, Joe, the other callers, the other text. It's George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, 710 KNUS, going right back to the phone lines. Jacqueline from Sydney, Nebraska. It's you on 710. What's going on?
I wish it was Australia.
That would be awesome.
George, bless your heart, hon, this morning. I tell you, I don't even know where to begin. Every one of your callers today was right on spot. In their own way, they've made a list, a huge list of what's going wrong in this country. Now, I want to remind everyone, in the 1800s, after the Civil War, a lot of homes, a huge amount of men never came home. And there was homes across this country that had women raising children. Second World War, same thing. Men didn't come home. There was a lot of homes in this country that were raised by women. Their families raised these children. Vietnam, the same way. Now, the only difference back then, and I'm going to say from the 1800s, 1900s, up to probably, I'd say 2000, is every single one of those homes, and I would bet you this, if they had it, had a Bible in that home. If they didn't have a Bible, the women prayed, the children prayed. If they could go to church, they went to church. Children need to know right and wrong. And all through history, we've had Judeo-Christian values that we had to go by. Why in the world do you think now that this White House and what's going on now has fought every church, has fought every decent Christian value, and why do you think they pump and promote perversion?
I don't know. I mean, is that the longer term solution then? I mean, I don't think religion can be the answer to all of it. I do think our idea of morality and values is part of this thing. But
all right, now let me ask you, children that grow up and there's homes that don't have a Bible in it. There's children that never went to church. Maybe they didn't have the right influence. Maybe they did, they didn't. They had someone in their lives, George, that gave them some kind of moral compass. And it doesn't mean that you were raised in a home without a father that makes you good or bad, because I know a lot of people that didn't have fathers. I knew a lot of kids I grew up with, their father died in Vietnam. But there was a mother, or there was a family member, or there was a teacher in their lives, someone of influence that set them on the right path. The 10 Commandments, we all know: you don't lie, you don't cheat, you don't steal, you don't bear false witness. It's called the 10 Commandments for a reason. It was given to man to behave. Now, when you don't have that, and I heard this Rush Limbaugh say this years ago, 30 years ago, I think it was, that if you have a society that doesn't have those moral values, call them whatever you want, you have a lawless society. Now, you have a governor, and I won't call him what I think he is, but he has done nothing about crime in Colorado. He actually has aided and abetted it. And you got a huge problem right now with these illegals coming in. What's Colorado going to do, George, when these people don't get what they want and they start taking it? You've got a huge problem besides the school shootings. I mean, it's going to start, and I don't know what the solution is going to be.
I don't either. I mean, out in Nebraska, what do you guys do? You guys have SROs in the school as the short-term solution? I mean, is there a...
Yes, we do have people in the schools, and there's always law enforcement crews in the schools, but we don't have big schools like you've got in Colorado. This is a small community, but you've got, it used to say a community raises a child. That is the truth.
Well,
you've got to be on your guard.
This thing that happened in Iowa, my understanding is it was a little more rural. It was about 25 miles away from Des Moines. So they're probably looking at a situation much like you have. I mean, when you hear law enforcement 7 minutes away, you're like, oh, dear God, do you know how much evil can be wrought in 7 minutes? But there's no way short of, and this is the other thing we need to know about this situation. Did they have an SRO there? I don't know the answer. Maybe it's already out there. I just haven't seen it. Was there an opportunity for somebody in or near the school to take some sort of decisive action that would have ended this? I don't know. But those are some other things that have to be part of the conversation. Those aren't long-term solutions. Those are real short-term solutions. But the stuff you're talking about with the morality piece, that will be the most sensitive and the most debated, but we should have the debate, right? Like for some, it will be, hey, you can never put religion back in schools. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just suggesting we've done a 180 on that. We have taken schools now and used them to destroy religion with kids. That's what we've done.
Well, they do, and I'll tell you, They do need security guards. They do need law enforcement in the vicinity of all those schools, especially Colorado, especially these big schools. Even this small school here, if there was something out, and there's a bunch of us that have radios that we can listen, they're police bands that we can listen to. You asked me one time if I would give somebody, if someone was coming through my door, if I would give them a warning. You know, I would respond to that because I have a concealed carry, and probably half of this community does. I would respond to that, and I don't think I'd wait to ask this young man to put his gun down. If I saw some boy or girl shooting up the school, I'm not going to give them the time
Of course. Jacqueline, as always, great call. I love that you listen. I too wish you had the opportunity to spend some time in your sister city out there in Australia. But until then, man, keep listening and keep calling in.
I love kangaroo meat. All right, bye-bye.
Oh, God, I love our listeners. 710 KNUS. Jacqueline's line is open, 303-696-1971. Joe from Aurora, you're on 710 KNUS. Joe, what do you think?
I think these kids need adversity training. I mean, compared to, I'm 37 right now. Compared to what, like I see my nephew and whatnot, like the stuff he goes through and the stuff, I went through as a kid. I mean, standing up to your bully should be one of the things that people should do. I mean, I know people don't, I'm not advocating for violence, but, getting through that adversity, teaching the kids how to get through the adversity, because they get to a boiling point and they don't know how to handle it, so they go off the deep end.
That's interesting too, this idea that this may be the product of adversity. It could be as big as bullying. It could be as small as just some sort of adverse life event that doesn't rise to that level. That's interesting too. Have you seen such training deployed there in public schools anywhere?
No. And my nephew got picked on, it was Cherry Creek School District. Yeah. And, they brought it up to, he stuck up for himself because, his grandpa and his uncle, told him, hey, defend yourself, like in some sort of fashion, like don't let people pick on you. So it boils over. But most of the time when they bring up issues to teachers and counselors and it just gets ignored. It goes in one ear and out the other. And that has to do that's a big staff issue. Now, as far as like security of a school, I think all schools, all entrances should have monitored access control with cameras. And if they're public schools, at some degree, maybe they start having law enforcement monitor, like they have those monitors in the parking lots, like your King Supers and stuff like that. Monitor the outside. I don't know. There's no real solutions to suggestions in my eyes.
No, listen, I think this is a great suggestion, and it's one that is not going to, what I appreciate is you don't say this is an end all be all, one size fits all solution. It's not, but is it part of the problem that can be addressed? It is. Kids not having the ability to deal with failure or adversity is a big deal. Resilience matters. Joe, thanks so much for the phone call, man.
And one more thing, if you don't mind.
No, go right ahead.
Or two more things.
Yeah.
Well, the wussification. Like, parents need to, I don't know what it is. I'm not a parent personally, but, like the kids are taught to not, I don't know. And then last thing I have, Eric Manning for an afternoon show.
That would be something, buddy. That would be grab popcorn while you're driving home. Listening right
get
there.
his burritos. Have a good one, man.
Thanks, Joe. Happy New Year, man. 303-696-1971. Joe's line is open. Let's go to Jim from Morrison. Jim, you're on 710. Hey, Jim. Hello, Jim. Jim, maybe you didn't think we'd get to you, but we have. And I don't know if you're being held hostage, hopefully not at gunpoint.
Hello?
Hey, Jim, you're there. Jim, you're on 710. What do you think?
Hey, George, I'm a couple of years older than you, and I grew up over on
You're
the
40.
slope. Yeah. Anyway, from day one driving to school, I had a shotgun and a rifle in my truck, but that's just times are different. But what I think is a big part of this is they don't let kids fight anymore.
Tell me about that. Tell me what you're talking about and why you think it would be a solution or a partial solution.
My son, he's 30 now, but his senior year in high school, that he was at a basketball game and got mistook by somebody else from a different school and fouled this kid. And my son's buying a Pepsi out of the Coke machine, and kid came up and waylaid him. The principal saw it.
Wow.
My kid turned around and finished it. They suspended my kid, even though the principal said she basically said he should have rolled up into a ball.
Did the other kid get suspended, the one who initiated it and all that?
He was at a different school. He was from a different school.
So, but
I
no,
don't know
the
what
cops didn't get called, nothing like that?
No, I live out east.
Man, that just seems like an injustice there. I mean, you always ought to have the ability to defend yourself without consequence.
Well, and the principal said, he should have rolled up, would have done that. I would have beat his butt. But
do you think then that the willingness and ability to resolve some situations like that would have somehow changed situations like what we saw in Iowa or even things we've seen here in Colorado? Talk me through that.
I do, because, there's always going to be bullies, and most of them don't fight very well.
It's interesting. So you think if this was the product of bullying, or maybe some other one was the product of bullying, if they had the ability to solve this more hands-on, literally, more kinetically, that might have been the outlet they would have chosen instead of trying to go to something lethal.
I think it's something to look at. Get a boxing match going on. Do some wrestling. If somebody wants to fight, let them do it productively. But let them box.
Yeah, I think there's something to that too, that we have. We've created an environment where everybody is so physically and emotionally fragile. You're talking about a different kind of resilience. I don't know if that's the right answer. I sure don't want there to be more school fights, but there is something to be said for a culture that has made us or made some generations just so fragile,
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, Jim, thanks for the phone call, man. Have a happy new year. I appreciate you calling in, buddy. Jim's line is open at 303-696-1971. Going to cut away for a break, and then we'll come back and wrap up the show. I'll tell you about a case that's going to come to resolution today up in Adams County. It's one we've talked about a bunch before, but not until I tell you about Gay Ribble with the Empower Home team at Keller Williams. They are magicians at finding a way to get you top dollar for your house in the timing that you need, and then getting you into that dream house where everybody's trying to get it. I talked about an article I read just last night, actually this morning, in the Gazette. Great place for news. And they talk about the real estate market looks like it's starting to heat up. Realtors are starting to get excited about 2024. If they're getting excited, that means they're getting interest. That means the prices on the homes you're trying to get into are going to go up. So it's not just the interest rates you're battling limited supply with increased competition for those houses. Get the experts on your side who can help you get top dollar for your house and get you into that dream house. And that's the Empower Home team at Keller Williams. You can find them and a whole bunch of free information that just makes you a better consumer at sellwithcertaintycolorado.com, sellwithcertaintycolorado.com. But I'd give them a call. Great people, super nice. Customer service is their calling card. 833-301-SOLD, 833-301-SOLD. When we come back, we'll wrap up with whatever texts and phone calls that we have, and I'll tell you about this case and how it's going to, how it could resolve later on today. It's George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. George Brauchler back with you here, right here in the jungle at 710 KNUS, finishing up the last segment of the last hour of the last show of the first full week of 2024. Today, former Aurora police officer Randy Rodema is going to be sentenced for his role in killing Elijah McClain way back in 2019. That thing finally came to court. If you'll recall, he was tried with another officer named Jason Rosenblatt, who was fully acquitted of the charges leveled against him, as was a guy named Nathan Woodyard, who is still an Aurora police officer with a separate jury. And then just recently, 2 paramedics were convicted, I believe, of criminally negligent homicide as well. This will be the first sentencing of those who were convicted. And the question is, what's going to happen? First off, understand that these were all lesser charges than what was pursued. The AG's office was trying to pursue some type of bigger mandatory prison sentence. None of that stuff happened. Manslaughter was rejected by the jury, but they did hold him accountable for the killing of Elijah McClain through criminally negligent homicide. It is a non-mandatory prison sentence, which means you can get probation. He could, both the charges, the assault charge, the misdemeanor assault charge, and this, he could walk right out of the courtroom sentencing for those things. It is a 1 to 3 year non-mandatory sentence. Understand that the lightest thing that could happen is he walks out of there on probation on both charges. The heaviest thing that could happen is he gets 3 years in the Department of Corrections. Let's talk about that part. 3 years in the Department of Corrections, because we don't have truth in sentencing here in Colorado. It's a non-violent felony. And because nobody on the planet Earth can tell you the minimum amount of time this guy would serve in prison before he would be paroled, our best guess, and I'm including DOC in this, they don't know either. Best guess is that this guy would be parole eligible at about a year and would likely be transitioned or starting the transition to community corrections well before that. So even if he were to get the maximum sentence, my guess is dude isn't inside prison for even a year. Doesn't mean it's a guarantee. I just think that's pretty much what happens. This dude has no criminal history. I think the other thing that could happen is the judge could say, I'm going to give you probation, but I'm going to give you jail as a condition. And that jail could be up to 90 days. It doesn't have to be in the Gray Bar Hotel. It could be work release. I think that's unlikely, but that could happen. There could be in-home detention. I don't see that happening either. I think, for Mark Warner, who was a prosecutor and a longtime judge up there in Adams County, and I think he ran some pretty damn good trials, knows what he's doing, knows how to run a case. I think this is a tough case. I think it's a tough case because if you wanted to give into the mob mentality of the squeaky wheels out there, you max this guy out and you go, I'm sending you to prison for 3 years. And your justifications, things you'd have to weigh in anyway, are the fact that even though this guy has no criminal history, this guy has no prior bad conduct that we can see at all, guy was in uniform with all the superpowers and mandated expected societal respect that come with that. And in getting this conviction from a jury, whether you agree with it or disagree with it, 12 people his team helped pick came to the conclusion that he owns responsibility, at least in part, for the death of this innocent young man. Well, you can't value Elijah McClain's life by locking up someone for a certain period of time. You have to value the conduct and the person who committed it. And it's just tough. I mean, it would be a tremendous gutsy act. I'm not saying the right one. I'm saying gutsy act for the judge to send this guy out the door on straight probation without incarceration. I think it would also be gutsy and equally unsupported to just send him to prison for the maximum amount of time. But what's the judge dealing with here? It's not just punishing him for this conduct. One of the other things that happens in sentencing is you try to send a message to society about how we value this conduct and this outcome. And if you don't get that many cases where police officers engage in felonious criminal conduct that results in the death of an innocent person, you do here. What do you do with that? Can such a person be let go and just walk out of the courtroom? I don't think so. I mean, I could be totally wrong, and I can't wait to hear what the arguments by each side are, and I can't wait to hear how the judge values those things. But I don't think so. I think that something has to happen here. But remember, the judge, too, has to consider this. There are 2 other people who led to the death of this young man more than this guy did. Even though the verdicts may look the same, the ketamine killed this guy, right? And now we've now criminalized medical malpractice with these paramedics. And the question is now, what are you going to do to them? Because you kind of set the bar with this officer. Now, what do you do with the paramedics that are coming up? If you're the paramedics in this case, if you're Kachuniak and is it Cooper? I totally forgot. You're sweating this one. If this guy gets a big sentence, you're in trouble. You are in real trouble. So it'll be very interesting to see how this thing plays out. That's the behind the scenes stuff you're just not going to get anywhere else. Maybe KDVR, because they're going to interview me on this thing as well. But anxious to see how this thing turns out. And then, of course, whatever sentence he gets, the defense is going to say, well, Judge, we'd like you to stay the execution of that sentence pending appeal. And that could happen. We've seen that happen before. But that's tough too, man. How do you say what you did, in my opinion, is worth incarceration, but I have enough questions about my own rulings on this case that I think it might be overturned? I don't think so. I think the judge says no on the appellate bond if such a thing is asked. He's not required to give it. I think that happens. I think if the dude gets sentenced, we see him leave the courtroom today in cuffs. And if I had to bet, I'd bet that's what happens. Tragedy around the entire case, but damn, man. Innocent kid killed on the streets through no fault of his own. That's a tough one to walk away from. Hey, listen, we'll come back on Monday. We'll talk about that and so many other things. You guys have made this show great today. I think we've really done something good with the conversation. Let's try to keep this thing going next week. It's George Brauchler on The George Show. You've been listening to 710 KNUS.